Hey guys, this is Mike, and if you all want to introduce yourselves at the same time, make a bunch of noise for Colin to deal with.
Oh, there's so many title cards I just realized I gotta make all those. All right.
So,
Woo!
what was that? I don't know if I'm pointing at the right people, but we got me, Dylan Hunt, Alex Blandon, Colin, and Brendan Bremont. Everybody knows Colin because he's the one I do this with most of the time. And we're here talking Banlist.
That thing that just happened, probably yesterday
Fuck
or the
Sherry.
day before.
Fuck Sherry.
Sherry.
Yeah, that's the in a nutshell version.
Yeah, basically. That's basically what the ban list was. It was just fuck Sherry and a ban list.
Fuck Sherry and Banlist, and then also here's Wander and Origins is unchanged. We'll get to all that. But in
The
the
last
meantime,
ban list was an IOU, and then
Yeah. So do we want to start talking about the old ban list, what they originally attempted to do with
we'll talk about
banning?
the old ban list when we talk about what got unbanned.
Yeah. What
yeah,
they
that basically is the old ban list. Like,
so they edit undude.
So we got a vanilla.
sorry, I couldn't hear what Brandon was saying there.
We
Hey,
got
turn up
everyone's
your mic.
The ban was. Sherry got banned, Rune Story got unbanned, and then Jin and Eve both got unbanned.
Yes.
so we got 5-5 vanilla for 2, a 7-7 vanilla for 3, and
Hey,
a really
they're also dolls for Puppet Maker. I mean, come on.
Yeah, come on, you could draw off of Eve. Ooh.
What even is Genie? Is he looking to eat a spirit or something?
He's shit is what I would say he is, but I
No,
mean, it's
He's
the
a
more
spirit,
shit
so
you
can get him back with the
The fucking lamp shit?
No,
Fuck
that's
the
just
lamp. The lamp
No,
is
no,
such
the
bullshit.
lamp.
It's such a
The,
fucking stupid card.
No. The blue-white Almerius, which brings back spirits by rolling a die.
That's even worse. Don't
I
even,
know.
that's
I
not- it's not a
I
card.
tried so hard
Bro.
just to make a deck that functioned with that card. I tried so hard. It's hard, man. They made it
It
hard.
doesn't work.
It doesn't.
You can't reliably roll dice.
Well, and you can't reliably like.
No,
you can't-
no. Colin's like, no, I got this. I just rigged the dice and I always get it. It's fine.
I roll 6-sided dice. All sides
To
are
make
6.
it work, you have to run Pandora resonators just so you can roll more than one dice just to make that work.
Alright.
And it's bad. Anyways,
I think Alex is ready to rant because he's got this face on.
yeah,
so.
he's
What's
bottled up.
Alex's rant?
well, I mean, what they took 6 man.
He's got the steely face on. He's gonna rant. So let's let him go.
I mean, so what do we want to talk about first? We want to talk about Scheherazade. I mean,
Yeah, I mean it's basically the ban list. So I mean, Sherry is the ban list. So let's just go into it. Why not? That's what it is.
so wow, they finally managed to not ruin their format for another 3 months. I mean, it's great that they decided to not wait until the first set came out like they did last year to ban Hook, Prisha, and Griffin, but it doesn't really change much. The damage has already been done. It's the same deal as last year with Prisha and Fox, where they waited, and the year before with Reflect. It seems like Force Will Company has this continuous cycle of waiting until the end of the year. So it's usually anywhere from 5 to 6 months of waiting for whatever broken card they print to ruin their game, and then they decide, hey, it's the end of the year, so we'll ban it because the new cluster is coming out. So
I mean, at least they announced it before Worlds. I know it doesn't actually affect anything besides day 2 of Worlds, but at least we got it beforehand. Last year was a freaking shit show where we had Prissy and Fox all over constructed. There was no other decks at all. They literally ruined Worlds basically in terms of actually having any kind of deck diversity.
no one is arguing that World format last year was absolutely garbage and unplayable, especially the fact that we
The fucking privilege system, like, oh, you won more, so you get to choose who goes first, and oh, by the way, you're not allowed to play opaque sleeves, so just fucking take any rulers you got out of your sleeve and just fucking throw them on the table because no non-clear sleeves, and oh my god, such a shit show.
Defense, that sticker system did end up being the best part of Worlds, the second to last round.
Oh, when fucking Jackson got banned, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay, I'll agree on that. I'll agree that was like the best part of Worlds, but...
Wait, hold on. We got Ryan joining in, just letting you guys know. Here he is.
Uh-oh.
There are too many of us. Goddamn clown car.
Oh my god, it's about damn time, you fucking drunkard. Where have you been?
Says fucking Alex, of all people.
I was actually picking up the bottle as I said that.
There he is.
Hey, sorry guys.
Hey, welcome to the Daily Mileage.
I was busy playing fucking League of Legends, and I just like.
Oh my god.
Oh, there we go.
Oh yeah.
Look at that fresh haircut.
Yeah, most professional looking person here, at least.
Yeah, my hair's a fucking travesty. So
I just cut all mine off, so.
Oh my god.
That
Dylan.
That's
Dylan.
Hang on, we were busy. I was busy trying to get Ryan on here. So Alex, please continue destroying.
We're going on about the privilege fucking system at Worlds and how it was just a trap.
The
How the ban list came out before Worlds, at least, even though it doesn't really.
It's not even worth hashing out at this point. But
We're
yeah,
worried about the ban list in Worlds. This is
Ryan, to catch you up, we were just discussing how Force of Will is always slow to ban the best card, and they let it ruin their game for 6 to 8 months every time, and then they banned it.
No. This was like a well-documented thing that happened.
What is the well-documented thing that happened?
Like the reason, like Jeff wanted to ban Scheherazade. Oh my god, I'm like fucking losing poker on the other monitor.
Oh my god, get in here!
All right, so Jeff wanted to ban Scheherazade, and he was like, "Hey, company, I want to ban Scheherazade." And then the company was like, "All right, well, we'll ask the most important players in the entire world if we should ban Scheherazade." You know who the most important world players in the entire world are?
Italy.
No, it's Japan, because it's a fucking Japanese company. So Japan was like, "Yeah, we kind of want to ban Scheherazade." Only 53%. I'm sorry, I'm like yelling at my roommate sleeping. Only 53% of players wanted to ban Scheherazade, so it was just like, that's enough to like make us wait a set, and it wasn't a big deal. And like, there are clearly other Scheherazade like decks that are playable besides Scheherazade. I think that like Dylan showed that like Lumia is a very viable deck, and then he got a game loss in top 16, which is pretty unfortunate. I think Time Spinning Witch was a pretty viable deck. Like there were like definitely other options. It just kind of fell prey to the fact that like Scheherazade was the best deck. Everyone kept playing it, and like all the good players were on it. So it was just kind of exasperated. Like it definitely was bannable, but it really wasn't like.
I really like how you mentioned Japan, because it was actually really telling how EG went to that event with the freaking structure deck, and then literally every player was playing Scheherazade. So it's like, well, when Japan, who during the Fox Prisia meta was all Lumia, when they're all playing Sherry, I think that's the freaking problem, right? Like when Japan, who doesn't give a shit about anything,
they didn't want it. They were like, yeah, we were gonna play it, like, but like they just didn't want to ban. And they were all playing the null page version. Like Japan was the one who came with like the null page intervention reality nonsense. So they were just like having this very weird interactive like. I feel like the internal Japanese meta like all got onto null page to kill Puppet Maker, and then all also got onto intervention reality to kill each other's null pages, and then just had this really fun format for like 2 weeks, and they're like, here's a poll, and they're like, yeah, we're having a great time. We're just like playing null page, like each other's null pages, just whatever.
Well, isn't their GP at like 30 people or something like that?
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying. What is 53% of their player base? 10 players? Like, 10 players wanted to ban 10
What's
players?
America's player base? Like, it's the same fucking thing.
hey, you can have like an 80-person event. That's way more than fucking 10 people. I don't know about you, but I don't care where you're fucking located. I'm gonna ask 10 people versus 80 people. Which one would you go with?
I think it's between like 30 and 50 people. Like, I'm not.
Yeah, gotta go with the 10 people. They're in Japan, so let's go with them.
I'm not saying you shouldn't ban it. I'm just saying like there was like a reason for it. I'm not saying
yeah.
reason. I'm just saying
Japanese company reason
exist kind of thing. You know?
Yeah.
The problem is that like Japan only cares about what like Ryan said. Japan only cares about Japan because they're a Japanese company. So they're like, what's Japan think? And Japan doesn't fucking matter. They're not the majority of their sales. They're not the majority of their player base, and they're just not good at the game. No offense to them, but like look at their deck list. And
well, it's not even that they're not. Like I wouldn't even go as far as to say it's not good. They just don't care. Like why would they care? There's no real incentive for them to play. Well, are they going to win a trip to Japan? Like there's no. It's just there's no reason for them to try hard, right?
So like if we design like Alex, so you're part of Argent Saga. So if Argent Saga just randomly fucking takes off in Vietnam, and Vietnam is just the most popular fucking country for Argent Saga, and then like it just dies off in America and it dies off in English speaking parts of Europe, you shouldn't be like listening to
sales wise or tournament wise, because it's a difference.
I think it's both for Force of Will, so I'll say both for
Okay, all right, sure.
Like that's the argument, right? Like it's just like it's their home country. Like it's not a project they created because they wanted to be like financially responsible. It's not when you make a card game. You make it because you have a passion for it and because you want to have fun. And like it's great that Forceful is succeeding in Europe and it's somewhat succeeding in America, but really I'm sure what they wanted to do when they made the game was say, let's make this like for our friends and for our Japanese players and make it a local thing. Like that's what they wanted to do. So when it's failing in Japan, but it's still being bolstered by sales from other regions, they're going to take that money like from the other regions and be like, okay, let's cater to the Japanese player base, try and revive it here, and they're not going to fuck it up in other regions because we'll swallow anything at this point. For like, we already got through Reflect, Refrain, Bahamut, Fox, and Scheherazade. Like, they really can't fuck us any harder. Like, so it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, if this is their pet project, this is what they do for fun and for a living. Like, why would they fucking care about us? Like,
I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you're gonna go that route, that they're not doing a good job, because the Japan player base is dropping even more than I would say it has previously.
It's
from what I've seen,
dominated
anyway.
Market, and like,
yeah, its TCGs are really heavy in Japan.
Yeah, like smaller TCGs get smaller. That's just the way. That's just the that's how sharks eat smaller sharks, kind of thing.
Well, and I feel like that's one of the reasons they.
Bushiroad, I guess.
Yeah, well, it's Bushiroad's home territory too, and they do like really well with 3 different trading card games in the same territory, right? So I mean, plus there's like Yu-Gi-Oh and all the other games that are always doing well in Japan, right? And I'm sure I don't know them off by heart or anything, but I'm sure there's tons of new games like every week, and like you said, small games just get smaller, right?
Well, and that's why they made Caster Chronicles. Caster Chronicles is doing really good in Japan, as far as I'm aware. So
yeah, there's so much Twitter activity for it. There's all these random stores just always having events for it, which, if you ask me, having all these random stores doing events means that it's doing pretty well, because Japan's very segmented, right? So it's a market where it's all smaller stores holding all the events.
That should be their pet project for Japan. If Force of Will is not big in there, they should put all of their Japanese resources at making casters grow there, because they're sure as heck not using it in the U.S. to grow casters here. And so,
like Force of Will. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but I agree with you 100%. Like, casters should be Japan, and Force of Will should be everywhere else.
Yeah, because it's the equivalent of, like, to go back to what you guys were talking about, as far as them asking the Japanese base as far as Sherry ban, it'd be equivalent. Like, I live here with my wife Melissa, who plays Force of Will sometimes, and we go to our locals. And the locals is having this problem with Sherry, and they're like, you should see if we should ban Sherry. So I come back and I ask my wife Melissa, should we ban Sherry? And she's like, nah. It's like, she really has no insight to it. She barely comes to the locals when we do go and stuff like that. And so if I don't do it, I'm going to lose out on probably this is an analogy. In real life, I did lose out on all of our locals because of Sherry. But in this analogy, I'm going to lose them now in order to appease the person who barely plays it to begin with. They're just saying whatever isn't good in the moment.
It's not good business sense. Like, it makes no sense from a business perspective, honestly.
I disagree with that, because from a business perspective, their third set and their, I think, highest selling set at the time was like just the Scheherazade set. Like, it does make sense from a business perspective that you would not ban the card that is selling you the most packs. Like,
was it though? Because like I know IU, for example, was a really big pack seller, and it wasn't the biggest set because there were just so many good cards in Time Spinning, which it's pretty hard to argue that ADK would outsell it, for example. But if you're just looking purely from a business perspective, Time Spinning, which was the most successful set, but was it necessarily you're going to attribute that to Cherry, or are you going to attribute that to the rest of the set, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say.
Because you also have like Lorite, you have.
You do, but like, are you going to take that gamble and say, okay, let's ban this card that's coming out of our most selling set and assume that it's coming from IU and Lorite, or are we just going to like let it ride? Because it's just
I mean, you're definitely right. Like, Konami does the same thing with Yu-Gi-Oh, right? Yu-Gi-Oh is entirely dictated by the ban list, and they always don't ban things from the new set because obviously stores are going to be upset, players are going to be upset if the newest set has a banned card in it, because then you're opening boxes for banned cards, and the box has no value because you're going to pull this banned card. It's not playable. It's not worth anything. So now you don't want to buy boxes. So you directly hurt your product instead of helping it by banning the card. You're right. And from a business perspective, directly, like the immediate short term, it doesn't make any sense at all to ban a card without waiting at least one set.
Let's be honest, you weren't pulling a ruler out of that set.
But they waited 2 sets. They waited 2 sets was the problem. They waited until this set coming up.
Perfect, because we get a new block. We're getting a whole bunch of new rulers. Like, this is where they want to just push sales into the new product that's coming out, especially because they're selling fucking 5 structure decks on top of it. This is where they want to put all their, like, marketing into. So, like, they don't want older
marketing. Let's use that term.
Look, okay, so this is something that Jeff's talked about where he wants to like start advertising. It's not going to be like excessive stuff, but it is going to be like at the local.
It's where
level.
they need to go,
like on the online level kind of stuff.
Yeah,
like they are putting some effort into it where previously there has been zero. So like
he did tell me he has they do have a marketing plan going forward.
It's something that's very disappointing to see for a company that at the beginning of the year was hyping up the fact that, oh, we're making changes to the R&D, and you won't see it in the first 2 sets, but the third, the fourth set, you'll start seeing the changes, and then by next cluster, we'll be all good guys. Like, that's basically what they were preaching at the beginning of the year, and I really haven't seen any of that, honestly. At first, when the runes and everything was getting previewed, I was like, wow, it looks like they're making legit change. And then I start seeing zero-cost runes that do really good things, and I'm like, oh, well, so much for that. Like,
well, I mean, it's like Ryan was saying, they're a Japanese company. They're really, really slow. I mean, I know that's what Jim always goes on about. Like, Japanese companies can't make card games because they're too slow and they don't understand American markets. But
their business sense is their business mindset is very different. Like, look at Konami. They don't have any rotation. Their sales tactic or market strategy is just keep printing more and more broken cards every set and then ban them every like.
Yeah, well, it's based around the Banlist is their whole marketing strategy, right? Like, they're really smart about it. It's really dumb the way they do their game, but it's really smart from a marketing perspective because you don't see anything in the newest 2 sets banned unless it's literally going to destroy the game. And then after 3 or 4 sets, all the cards people complain about get banned, and they make new ones that are much better, so you don't miss the old cards. Like, it's really smart from a perspective for them.
The problem is you can do this. They've been running the strategy for close to 20 years now.
And it works.
Fine. But at some point, they are losing more and more players because at some point, the power level just gets so high and boils over to a point where you actually just can't keep, like, now Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, it's like going first is like broken in Yu-Gi-Oh! I'm not super familiar.
Absolutely, 100%. That's always been the thing in Yu-Gi-Oh! It only gets worse as time goes on. Because like I said, the power creep is just going to keep going up and up because that's the way they design their game. But the biggest thing is what Ryan was saying with what Jeff's trying to do with advertising at local base. Konami dumps like ridiculous amounts of money into advertising the game on like YouTube, on Facebook, on all kinds of avenues. Local stores, they make you do a game day like twice a year if you're an OTS store. I can say that from experience.
Though, so they can
but that's the thing, right? It's really easy for them to keep getting old players back into the game or to get new players interested.
They can afford to do dumb shit like just make their game insane because they have everything backing it up. They have everything in place to support these crazy decisions. They have an anime. They have
So let's just like take a
but that's a marketing tactic too, right? Yeah, let's listen to
Ryan. Yeah, exactly. But
let's just say like Forceful is never going to be able to do that. Like we're not going to have an anime. Like they tried to do it, but like it's just such a big budget stake that I think they really overestimated how much it was going to cost. We're not gonna have a digital game, which I think is actually like the most disappointing thing out of all of the things that ended up failing from Forcible.
I was hyped for that online system. Like, you know how great that we have like a ranking.
Have you played the Lightseekers online game? Because I didn't think that was gonna fire. The same way I didn't think Forcible.
I just looked at the new Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which maybe I've seen people as Lightseekers. That digital game is awesome, and that's not even out yet. It's in beta right now.
Well,
it's great.
It's because Lightseekers was already a game, and then it failed, so they just asset flipped it to try and sell it as a card game, and now that they have the engine, they're selling it onto other properties. So that's why they have a functioning game, is because that's what their initial marketing plan was to sell a game, and the cards were just a method to, or I think they were new figures initially, but it's just a method to sell the game, and that's why the game is solid, because before the original company flopped, that's what the initial idea was. So they just stole all the assets and kind of flipped it from there.
Yeah, so even like despite like the asset part, like just the actual like mechanical game, like just functions very well, like almost like in my opinion competitive with Hearthstone, and the fact that like Hearthstone's like garbage like coded. It takes me like trying to log into Hearthstone is a problem, and that's disgusting for like a multi-million-dollar company. But like Lightseekers fires up immediately. There's very few bugs that I've encountered. Like you can just play the game. It's intuitive. It's super straightforward. Like it teaches you how to play it, and you're good to go. Like the Lightseekers app goes above and beyond my expectations, beyond all belief. And I'm just so disappointed that Forcible couldn't pull that off, especially because like MTG Arena just fired, and that's like a functional, like cohesive like version of online Magic the Gathering, whereas like the previous MTG Online was just like kind of clunky and like looked a lot like lackey almost. I think if Forcible had actually successfully launched like the Battle Simulator, like that would have been like their ticket into top 4 territory.
They had a bunch of tickets in the top 4 territory.
No, I think that is like the single thing. Like all of the flaws.
I think are they not still technically number 4 in terms of sales, or
they're like number 7, I think. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's like the big 3, and then it's like Vanguard.
Yeah, I
don't
think
even know
Vanguard
anymore.
might have taken it.
Like Vanguard, Star Wars Destiny. Anyways, so the topic I really want to talk about tonight is the new cluster, and I know Brandon has been anxiously awaiting to talk about
Eating his soup, waiting.
He has just been. I can see him like sitting there, like sighing, bored. Like he's just been waiting to talk about runes. So, Brandon, I'll let you have the floor on runes.
Appreciate you, Alex.
All right, turn up your mic first so we can actually hear this rant.
But let's hear the rant on runes because it feels like you've had it. You've just been storing this.
It's biting.
Save some of it for tomorrow, at least.
I already did my big rant on Ruler School, but I think
I don't watch Ruler School, so I don't watch Forceful content at all.
It's worth watching, I will say. It's like I understand your friendship with Jeremy Franklin, but it is worth watching.
No, it has nothing to do with Jeremy. I don't watch content at all. It has absolutely nothing to do with Jeremy.
Alex can't fit it into his busy schedule.
I literally do not give a shit about content. I don't even read deck lists anymore half the time because I just
Between
don't.
all 5 of you,
Okay.
just give me a rough guess. How many posts on the US page have you seen that say, what are runes? What is divinity? How does runes work? How do divinities work?
A lot of them.
I've made articles and videos explaining it too. It's very frustrating.
I think it's vicinity of 8 or 9 that I've seen. I mean, it is like unreal how complicated this mechanic seems to be for new players. There's a ridiculous amount to think about. I've probably played 30 or so games with the new cards so far, and like even I struggle with this like 10 card. Like Sherry is one thing because like it's the same 10 cards that you have every time.
Well, basically it's the same 5 cards if we're gonna go with Sherry, right?
10 cards because like you 5 in your opening hand, 5 in the rune deck. But like with the runes, there's so many different viable runes and 5 for every color. Like even if there are just 5 for each color, that's still 25 different runes, and like learning all of them is just like a gargantuan task even for me. And I like actually can't even imagine a new player sitting down and trying to figure this out. It's like this mechanic is so garbage for new players. It is like actually unreal how much they are just shooing away anyone that wants to come and learn this game. And like as I was telling Ryan earlier, and I know Ryan kind of disagrees with this point, but it's really imperative for new players to be able to look at a ruler and understand the direction they're supposed to go, and like understand like the ruler should give direction for what kind of deck they want to build, especially starter deck rulers. So like things like Keurig kind of talks like, oh well, maybe strength counters are going to matter. Shayla's like, oh, let's find cards that care about the weather being rain. With these rulers, there's so little direction for new players that I think it's going to really harm that influx into the game. Beyond that, and this is another point that I made. The point of this, I am so lost, and I still have not had an answer. What is the point of making this extremely risky jump in changing mechanics from your game? Like this game was already so good on everything except for balance. The art's great, we all agree on that. The rule set is great, we all agree on that. The community in general is pretty non-toxic for as far as communities.
Other than this Alex guy.
Yeah, I was about to say it doesn't exist anymore, so that's why it's not toxic.
Sure. But there was no
anybody.
We banned most of the toxic players. Alex is the one left. Just ban him, and Force Will's great.
I was about to say everybody who's still playing Force Will is in it for the long run. There's nobody still playing Force Will who isn't all about Force Will.
Well, I'll be honest. There's a lot of new players with this, all the starter decks and all the stuff they've done at Gen Con and stuff. As much as you'll say it's not efficient advertising, there's a lot of players I've noticed locally that I've had really a big struggle trying to get people into the game. But all of a sudden, there's like 5, 6, 7 people all asking about the game, asking to get in, and
ever since Gen Con, it's been a huge influx, even on our channel.
Runes yet they still don't understand what the runes are. Like the structure decks from the last set were great, but I'm saying is these runes are just not a great direction for the game. I still don't understand.
I mean, I'll be real. At any new game, anytime you're trying to learn a new game, you're always going to have a really uphill struggle when it comes to memorizing cards because, like Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, it doesn't really matter what game you're playing. Hearthstone even, there's going to be tons of cards, like hundreds of cards, and you have to memorize literally every card because you'll always play into someone else's trap, and you'll always have a bad time when you play into like a miscalc, or you play into a snipe, or you play into a Thoughtseize, or any other kind of card like that. It doesn't matter what kind of game you're playing. You're always going to have to learn literally every card, and it's always a really uphill battle.
But you're
The amount of things that you can be doing. It's like when I draw my opening hand as someone that has played this game for 3 years and I consider myself relatively competent at it, it is overwhelming for me to like look at this hand of new cards that I haven't seen, look at this pile of 5 runes that I've seen, and think, what am I doing? Like, it is just way overwhelming the amount of choices that they're given, and I love that. But I love
that.
I like it too. I like it too. But
let's think about time constraints for new players now, because now I have to think about 40 fucking ruins that can be in my opponent's deck based on whatever mana.
I think this is a very, very false argument, because if you're playing against someone and you don't know what they're playing, or like just do not know what their generic strategy is, like we're so used to being in this like fucking 6-month-long Scheherazade meta, preceded by the 6-month-long Fair meta, preceded by the 6-month-long Fox meta. We're just so used to knowing like the 40 cards in our opponent's deck that I think we're spoiled by that. And the argument that I have is, most of the time when you play against someone, you should like just generally be very wary of what cards, like to 20 to 25 cards of what are in their actual deck. And because it's forcible, like in Magic, you see their land base, you have a general idea of what's going on. But in Forcible, you see the ruler, and now you have like a much greater idea of what's going on, especially when you see the stones they start calling. But like with the runes do, it's like it's no longer just like thinking about like what the 5 cards in your opponent's hand are, which you already have a lot of information on based on the stones and the ruler. But now like the extra 5 runes, I don't think it's actually adding on that much more than like the 40 cards in the deck. It's really just like, okay, you know what runes exist, you know what cards exist in that color. Like we've already memorized like 8 sets of cards in color for black and green and arguably white and maybe blue, right? Like, and we just ignore red cards because.
But I feel like every game like that. All right, so if you play,
no, not at all.
Yeah,
it's so much more drastically exaggerated in this game.
I feel like okay to some extent, but I feel like okay, so Hearthstone is an extreme. If you're playing Hearthstone, and I know because I've been watching my friend play ladder, he's like top 10 legend right now. He has been for the last 2 months. I've been watching him play ladder a lot. He knows every card in his opponent's deck on the ladder at all times, except maybe 2. Every deck is the same.
That's wrong, right? Like we can agree on that?
Yeah.
Like that shouldn't happen?
It's like, okay, so he goes, oh, he plays, okay, so it's Malagos Druid. They have 28 of the same cards in every single Malagos Druid.
Right.
Token Druid. They have 28 of the same cards in every Token Druid. And you know right away, as soon as they play one card outside of the pattern, which one they're playing. Like, it's
what I'm trying to say is, like, we, as players, we don't want that to happen. Is that
absolutely.
Like, something you can agree with?
Well, what I would say, it's probably the biggest thing is, sorry, what are you saying, Brandon?
Yeah, I want to hear what Brandon has to say.
Well, they said if you're saying that that's not the state that you want to be in, therefore runes are not a very good idea because runes contribute to what Alex is saying.
Not really, because you're going to play different runes.
Yeah.
The whole thing you were saying was that the runes could be anything. Like, you have 40 different cards they might be playing, right?
Until they flip their ruler, and now their game plan is going to be very consistent over every single game because they
are they though? The master rune is basically the only thing that you're going to know off the ruler, right?
My issue for new,
not even close to the case.
Subject
the moment they flip their ruler, you're going to know 4 out of their 5 runes every time, guaranteed.
Well, like for example, I might be playing Hanzo, but I'm definitely going to play the discard rune, right? So, like off the bat, you don't know that from playing Hanzo, right? Well, it's just an example, right? Like it doesn't match my color, but I'm still going to play it, right?
The problem is like the divinity is like limiting what runes you can actually pick. So it's going to be master rune plus discard rune plus best divinity 3 rune plus most playable divinity 1 rune, and then like the last divinity 2 rune is I feel like the only divinity, like the only rune that's going to have any actual like choice behind it, and that's just like the way I see it.
That is true. That's still what I said. 4 out of the 5 runes are going to be known.
So like what you were saying was like you're looking at your opening 5 and your 5-card runes, and you're upset that you just don't even know what's going on, and you're afraid that new players aren't going to know what's going on. So if everyone's picking the same 9 runes, then like what's the
if everyone picks the same card, then you know what they're going to play, right?
Guys,
real quick, Alex.
Too far down this rabbit hole here.
Yeah.
Real talk. I'm pretty sure none of these rulers fucking matter anyways because we're all going to be playing Raya rulers because they are just infinitely better than the rulers we have.
Actually don't agree with that. I thought that at first too, but now that I've played like enough of the blue mech deck, I actually think it's like New Frontier is viable, like, even right now.
Well, like it's like saying you'd play Kirik over Sherry. Like if you got 5 extra cards, it's a lot harder to argue that you'll always play Imul or you always play IU, right? Because
I think these rulers outside of their like the gimmick is like the ruler side ability. The reason they don't have ruler side abilities is because they have the runes. So that's supposed to be their quote unquote ruler side ability. But their flip side abilities, for the most part, are all really weak. Most of them do not have good flips. Like
the part you're missing from this equation is that these runes are insane. Like most of them are better than real cards, and like that's the real defining factor. Like scrap and build is like
we haven't seen all of them yet. And after today's preview, I'm actually becoming a little more convinced. Like when I saw like we have a 3-mana board wipe, like what? Like what was that? Like what are they thinking? Like so like the more time goes on, the more I agree with the statement that maybe these things are real, but at the same time, I just feel like like let's take Gil for example. Gil is actually just insane in cluster. The card does, it searches, it draws, it just does everything. It can't be killed. There's no way to actually kill Gil, if I'm not mistaken, besides combat. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is there anything that kills Gil currently?
I believe you can use the possession. Oh no, he's got
barrier.
Yeah, I mean it's really easy to kill him by combat. I know you're saying that that's not the only still no reason to do it.
He's got a 0 mana. I mean, a 1 mana plus 6,
0 mana +6/+6. Like, and on the other side, you can search it and cast 2 of them off one remove.
Yeah.
You can activate Lancelot's -10 ability to remove barrier.
Yep, just calling that. Thank you,
bro. Your opponent allows you to get to that fucking ability, you suck.
No. That's like that's a very, very like. That's something that you do with machines.
The next deck, this is I texted Ryan right after I did this. I played a game with the next deck where I activated that 10 counter ability twice.
But then the fucking 3-mana board got finished, and you were set.
Cluster or New Frontiers?
Cluster, obviously. What's New Frontiers?
Okay, well, I'm talking about New Frontiers. Are we talking about Worlds format, or are we talking about New Frontiers? Because as far as I'm concerned, nobody watching this gives a fuck about Worlds format, because that's a non-existent format. It's not even a real format to me, and I'm playing it.
It's like most.
Are you? I thought you said you weren't playing.
Are you actually playing Worlds? Alex, we have to shit on Europe. Like, please, dear fucking God, I hate the fact that you might top Worlds, but please fucking play at Worlds.
I do not. If I'm being totally honest,
come on,
play Worlds.
Fuck.
Okay, do you not see like
how much shit Worlds and you don't play? I'm better than you. Are you gonna?
Like, we need to put all Americans in top 8, or I will be really disappointed.
Bro, what about me? Canadian, come on.
all North American.
America's hat.
If you want my personal opinion, they're fucking better than us. Nobody plays the game in America anymore.
No one plays the game in fucking Italy. Look at their GPs.
That if you put our best 10 versus their best 10, we lose 9 out of 10 times.
I don't want our best 10. I just want our best 8.
Even our best 8, I think we lose. 5v5, I think it's fair. Anything more than that, I literally don't think
our best 5 make top 8, and 3 of their best 5 make top 8, and I'm still fucking happy. And I think that our best 5 should be their best 5.
Don't get me wrong here. I would much rather see the Americans do better. Honestly, I only care about my friends doing well. Like, I have friends from the EU, I have friends from America.
Yeah,
I don't know who makes it, as long as it's my friends. That's what I care about personally.
I just want to crush the people who have the biggest egos, and right now that's like the GSA region and like kind of Italy. So really, it's just like we have a lot of like fluff going from America, and I don't mean this like in any disrespectful way, but like we had a lot of ARGs where people were getting invites for like absolutely no reason. And
8 people ARGs. We got to beat 7 people. Like
we just have a lot of people going for almost no reason. And
we have a player from my locals, and I'm not saying he's bad or anything, but he got 2nd place at an 8-man ARG to get his second place. And that's no shit to him, but it kind of shit to the game itself, where someone can get 2nd place at an 8-man ARG and go to Worlds. Or in the case of Delaney, she literally won 2 matches of Force of Will to get her invite to Worlds. 2 matches. Someone could play 2 matches and go to Worlds for Force of Will. So that's kind of what I'm saying, that like American Force of Will is kind of a joke. And
like I will say the middle end of American Force of Will joke, but I still think that like, because I know that like a lot of, especially like among the pro scene, like a lot of the high-end Force of Will players in America, they just like they get their invite and then they just fucking coast the rest of the season. They don't put a lot of effort in their deck building. They just like want to scoop to their friends, and that was like extremely evident from like I don't know, May onwards. But like I think if we like actually put some effort, like us top tier players like really get together, deck build, play test, go ham, like I think America's going to crush Europe in terms of just like you look at like the big names, and I don't want to name names because I want to put myself in there, but like I think we're going to dominate Europe, and it's not going to be close. I think we're going to put at least 5 people in top 8 and maybe more, because I think that I can just name, like, unless we're just like kicking each other out by like some bad bracket pairings, like last World, I'm pretty sure Aaron would have topped if he didn't lose to Nick in the first round of draft. Like I think that we're going to have a good time in Worlds, and it's just because like when it comes down to like actually having to try hard, like we have to do it less in America, so our good American players top less, like win events less often than good European players, because we have no incentive to. Like Federico tops every event because he wants to. Like he could scoop, but he just wants to fucking win. And then you see like JPK wins events and he tops events because he wants to scoop to his friends, but like the event is just more spread out in a top 16 bracket that he actually gets to play more and like go higher. You know, Sasha, Chris Hartle's judging now. Leo's not coming to Worlds. I haven't even seen Giovanni since last Worlds. Like, what's his name? Di Clemente is going to Worlds. He's a pretty good player, but he's also got like a history.
So
of,
if you
like,
want to list off the good Europeans, it's Gianluca Di Clemente, as you guys know him as.
Yeah.
That
I'll play him round 2. We get the cute problem solved. Like,
yeah, that Alicio guy has been slaying at the Italy GPs this year. The guy who made it last year,
the Trailers?
Alicio Campagna. That guy has
Campagna. Okay,
yeah. He has been destroying Italian GPs. He's got like 2 second places, like 3 top 8s, and I've seen him play, and I don't think he's that good, but I would definitely say he's very, very lucky. We got Giovanni. Giovanni won the London GP this year, so he's got his paid. I'm trying to think who else. You got Enrico. Enrico just got second at Nats, and he's had like I think he's got 2 other top 8s this season. Trying to think of who else comes. Those are the ones that come first to mind for Italians. And then you have the Germans. You have JPK. Chris Hartel's not playing. 2 Germans I was very impressed with playing against when I went over to Germany were, number one, you already mentioned him, Sasha. Sasha was very, very, very good.
Sasha's been to Worlds 3 times. I like,
yes,
just, like hung out with him a couple times. He's a really cool guy.
There's another player you guys
the tree guy,
Stefan Frankowski. That guy has been slaying German events this year. He's topped, I think, 5 EU events this season. So that guy, I played against him personally. He is really fucking good. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him top, if not win Worlds. That guy is incredibly good. And then we got my boy Lars Graham. He's also pretty good. He's topped, I think, 3 or 4 events himself.
Man's in Iowa. I would bet money that Sam will do better. Sam Shake will do better at Worlds than Lars Graham. I think that,
I don't know about that.
Sam is not only the better IU player. I would put $100 on an IU mirror match between Sam and Lars. But I think that Sam will do better at Worlds than Lars Graham, because I think I play with Sam all the time. I think that he's a very, very solid player, and he just like absolutely like fucking crumbles under pressure at high events. But I'm gonna play Desic with him for a week before the event. I'm gonna fucking whip him into shape. The actual contender. But yeah, Lars is a wild card for me. Like he does just like an IU1 trick that just like is kind of just like feeding off of the Sasha Ben JPK ego fest that's going on, because he is also in like the German region. But yeah, I don't know. I think Germany is like actually like the Germany, Switzerland, Austria region is like one of the scariest regions, and especially with Leo not coming, and because like the Federico Di Clemente like potential like cheating thing is like an issue. I'm actually more scared of the Austria region, like the GSA region, than I am Italy. And like I don't know. Like that's
I think it's one of those grass is greener kind of things where everyone's always going on about how big Italy is and how it's always so much better. But it seems like they've basically got the same problem we have, where now that the game isn't doing as well, there's so much less people there, and we're having the same problems over in Italy that we are here.
Yeah, it's. I think the last GP, the most recent one they had this weekend, was only 135, which is
way low for them. Yeah,
especially given the region it was in. That was the most popular region, from what I understand. My Italian friends have told me that Rome is a little bit smaller region for the game. It's very slow there, so to speak. Whereas Bologna, where it was this past weekend, is a very good region for the game, and it just wasn't. It wasn't that big for Italian events. The German event that I went to in I can't think of it. The place with the wall. God, I'm gonna hate myself.
Berlin.
Berlin, thank you for watching.
The Berlin Wall.
The place with the wall.
Sorry. So Berlin
Oh my God.
had like 240 players. That's huge. That's humongous. Like when I went there, I was like, holy shit, Europe is popping. Like, how do they have so many players? Even in London, they had the first GP they had was 130 people, which was bigger than the London GP I went to 2 years ago when this game was alive and well. And then you have the second London GP, 13 people. Tell me how the fuck that happened. Can someone tell me how the fuck London GP had 13 people? There's a paid trip to Japan on the line.
They didn't have a wall. No wall.
My local gets more than 13 people. How did that happen?
Yeah.
The London scene has been like slowly built up by like Ben specifically, like this year. Like the first London GP was literally just like Ben just brute forcing the community, saying we're gonna have fucking GP, we're gonna have locals tournaments for Force Will. So when the second term is a Wanderer, it's like, well, I just got into this game this year. I don't have any fucking Wanderer cards. I'm not gonna show up. Like,
from what I heard, London's just really been doing bad in general for a lot of games. But Force Will obviously being one of the smallest ones, it's going to be the hardest hit, right? When there's like no card game scene, how are you going to scrape together 10 or 13 people for?
But not even 6 months earlier, they have 10 times as many players, and on top of that, it's the EU. So anybody, the playing region of the EU is like a 200 euro flight away at most. So like that's what blows my mind to me is like any of these players from Europe could have gone there and been like, all right, it's time to go grab myself a free invite, and just no one showed up. Like,
how many players were in the Bologna GP?
So they had the Masters event, which we had to qualify for, which I believe had 75, and then they had the main event, which, if I'm not mistaken, was 135.
Like maybe people are just like saving up for flights for that, you know, like it's just a cost thing because the events are back to back. It's Wanderer versus
as
Cluster,
cheap as
like,
it might
just
seem
completely
from one piece to the other. I'm sure there's people who in farther regions who would fly to like Italy but not to London, right? Like it's just how it works. Same thing with me, even in Canada. Like I would fly over to, like, let's say somewhere closer or drive, but if it's like going to be like a 16-hour drive, I'm probably not going to go to it, regardless of whether there's going to be 5 people there or 10 people or 100 people, right? If it's just that much farther of a drive or a flight, I'm just not going to go down, right? I'm sure Europe, being as geographically diverse as it is, probably has a similar problem.
The fact that the UK is an island nation definitely hurts that a little bit because you can't drive there.
Yeah, you have to fly there to the UK, which is like a big problem.
So segueing from this world's topic, because we got a little bit back on track, is back to the ruins. So besides being unintuitive, Brandon, what are your other problems with the runes? Is that like I understand it kind of like invents this, like it kind of does what Yu-Gi-Oh does, where every time they come out with something new, the whole game changes. So like first it was synchros, then it was exceeds, then it was pendulums, and now it's
Link monsters.
Link monsters. So like this to me felt kind of like we went from OG Yu-Gi-Oh to like synchro monsters, or maybe from like synchro to exceeds, where like the entirety of it's just a whole different game now. You're not even playing Forceful anymore. You're playing like Super Force Will or something.
So I think that one of the things that has continuously bit this game in the butt is consistency. It's like when rulers are too consistent on their front.
Oh, consistency.
Very boring. So like when you talk about Reflect Refrain being an extremely consistent ruler, Scheherazade causing a lot of consistency with the things that she can answer and how many cards she gets to look at. Like these are just things that constantly cause problems. You want games to be different every time, and especially with these new runes, they really just don't. Like and this isn't so much a statement about their power level. Like I do think that they're probably a little too strong, a little bit pushed, but even if they aren't that powerful, what they do is cause every game to play out the same. Like, and I'm going to go back. This is just Worlds format testing, so obviously I haven't tested any New Frontiers because I don't waste my time. But like even in just Worlds, we've been playing basically just machines against the mono black discard decks. Those are basically the only 2 decks before tonight. And every game played out the same. They use their runes to discard my hand. I scrap and rebuild, get something. I might use the next 6 rune, they blow my board. And it's like, it just, the game pattern plays out the same every single time. And regardless of whether or not it's too strong, it's definitely a little boring. And I just don't really see the point. Like, I don't really understand what these runes are adding to the game that we didn't have before. Like, is it more fun to see the same cards every time? Like, I don't think so.
I mean,
Is it more-
I'll go on the limb that I agree with you to a point, and I don't really agree with Alex, but I do agree with you. I do think that it's dumb that I think it's really dumb that we see repetitive gameplay because, for example, Sherry was like the prototype of this. I always know that if I'm going to play anything involving the grave, that there's a good chance they'll have something that will counter it, whether it's a Seed of Rebirth or a Laureate or something like that, or they're going to have Evil Elemental Uprising, and there's nothing I can do about it because it's in their extra deck and they just have it at all times. I think stuff like that's really dumb because it makes the game really predictable, and the whole point of card games is you're trying to predict what your opponent's going to do based on what they might have in their hand. And when you have cards that always start in your opening hand or always start in your extra deck or anything like that, you're going to see these repetitive games where it always comes down to, do I have the answer to their answer that they always start with, or do I not have this, or what do I do when they respond with this? And it's always this repetitive cycle that's just going to keep going over and over. I don't think that this is necessarily a bad thing. Like, for example, Alex's example that he gave with the synchro monsters. I think Yu-Gi-Oh! Had the problem they just introduced too many mechanics too often, and Force of Will has kind of been going down this route, so I'm hoping they stop with it. But Synchros was a really good move in the right direction because it helped kept Yu-Gi-Oh! Really fresh.
Agree. I actually love Synchros and Yu-Gi-Oh!
But Synchro was probably the best format in my opinion because there was just so much diversity and they had actual limitations on what you could do. But they continually just moved forward. Like XYZs was very, very generic, and then pendulums were not that popular, but they came really, really generic because you can pendulum anything. And then link monsters are literally, you have two monsters, you summon something, like it just goes off the wall. Like,
so, but what I meant more was like how the
introduction of constant mechanics can make the game just go to the point where it alienates everyone, and you're not going to.
This is just like I'm not trying to make like a super point here, but I am just genuinely curious. Would anyone like to defend why runes exist, like besides just Japanese like?
I think they're just trying to switch.
We're not defending anything, to be honest. What was the question again?
Okay, defend the why Force of Will Company felt the need to make this besides Japanese people just like extra decks.
Okay.
Why? What do you want Force of Will to make? Like they want to like create new cards.
I can answer that very easily. I want them to make unique, powerful effects that do not consistently occur every game. I want them to put the power off of the ruler and into the main deck, and I think that the runes count as being on the ruler.
So I can agree with that. They're just so fucking bad at that I don't hate.
Actually, the Seven Kings rulers were perfect. Go back.
Are you kidding me? Freaking Rezard was literally garbage. He's the worst freaking ruler I've ever seen.
I disagree.
And I've seen a battle for Torika rulers.
Like the BFA rulers of the original rulers.
Some of them are better. Like some of the BFA rulers are better than Rezard. I will literally straight up say that right now.
Wait, are you talking shit about like the original Rezard?
Yeah, that one.
Oh my god, where's Aaron Miles? Hold on. He's gonna be here in 5 seconds.
SKL meta was one of the best, most playable metas this game will ever have. SKL meta was actually almost perfect.
Laser Cthulhu is the best format. Alex.
Yes, I can agree. You could play Alice.
That was the shit. That was the shit.
You could play Arlen.
Okay,
Bad Knights.
This is a very relevant point. When you take the power off of the rulers and put it into the main deck, that inherently increases diversity because the ruler is less important. So you can play different rulers with the same different decks, and the most powerful effects don't always come together as often as they do with like Scheherazade or Fox or Prissy or Reflect. Or you see how
I feel like there's like a really good middle ground where your ruler isn't as good as like Lumia, for example, where she's always good in basically every deck because you'll always be able to trigger her ability. But ones like, for example, Blazer, where you have a color filter. Sylvia, like minor differences that cards, well, it doesn't have to be color filter, but you get what I'm saying. Like a minor ability that actually defines your deck is what I think they kind of need to do. Like they definitely have gone off the charts with like standing, they can make an extra mana, or like flash your guy to get in their ability, or any of these like really game changing front side abilities. I think really minor ones are what you basically need.
They just need abilities that you have to pay mana for, like
or they're really minor.
Like you're just building your deck around this thing, like. If you build your deck around it, you get to do this like thing for free. And like a lot of the enter abilities on cards are just not things you should be able to do for free.
Oh yeah.
And like none of the SKL rulers had that problem.
Well, they're all minor abilities, right? Like Rezard Milling isn't really a big deal. Like they're like you're right, they do pay mana, but I don't think if they're really minor abilities, they need to pay mana. Like Uh,
Force Will just needs to avoid the number 0. If it starts with 0 Force Will, you fucked up.
I agree with that.
Literally avoid the number 0. That's
What-
all I want.
I think 0 is fine for an ability, but not for a card.
I
What-
think Zero is one of my fan favorites. I mean, she's one of the like real.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that because the runes that have been printed, the 0 mana runes, we're calling them cards, but because they are only runes and they are not chant runes, aren't they actually like just 0 mana abilities?
Yeah,
Like,
they're
Well, are you not able to
0 mana
cancel
also
them with
doesn't-
like cancel spells and such? I mean, they're 0 mana, but
they're
What-
worse.
what do you
They're
pay?
actively worse than 0 mana abilities because they're cancelable by cancel
Yeah.
spells.
No, Lorite already makes that argument irrelevant. I mean, you can cancel activated abilities, so it's like,
Yeah. So that's
What are you
actually
gonna
worse.
cancel them? What are you going to cancel them with? The 3 mana cancel?
Yeah. So like, okay, like in a perfect world, they would be better because you should be able to cancel cards with less than you should cancel activated abilities or opposite way around. But
real quick. What
like
was,
I'll just be straight. Lorite was a mistake. He's just the stupidest
agree
card I've
with
ever seen. But
I hate
I'm
I
Lorite.
would
not-
disagree. I will say that Time Spinning Witch is the stupidest card we've ever seen, and then
it's close, but I do think Lorite is just so stupid on every level, like color, on having the flexibility, on the cost of Lorite, like the fact
Having
that
a
it gives
body
you a
on the
body.
field.
The lower side ability
Yeah.
spinning, which doesn't make any sense to me because like having started for those of you who do know, I'm on the R&D team for ARG's new game Argent Saga, shameless plug. And one of the things
On ARG
I
channel.
like on the ARG channel, yes. So one of the things when I'm like trying to balance cards or like I'm trying to throw cards to Jeff is one thing I want to avoid is cards that limit our future design. So one of the things about TSW is because it produces mana for basically everything but a creature or a spell. Now you have to think about every card and awakening and activate ability you print from here on out. Can this be abused by TSW? And I think that's something Forceful doesn't do very well. Is they print cards and they don't think how it limits them design wise.
I disagree with that.
I think Awakening is a very
TSW
specific
is
ability.
Very specific. It produces.
Yeah.
It's for mobilize, awakening on chant specifically, and what activated abilities and it has to be colorless. So like, if you want to make it like a broken card, because they're
Just make it
pushing a
two green or
monocolored format,
water
just
or-
make it a colored mana, and then it's just no longer broken. I think it's
that-
well designed for future design stuff.
And its Awakening is a very specific mechanic that we don't actually see that often until very recently. Like it's very easy to balance around the fact that if I'm making colorless Awakening, Time Spinning Witch can interact with this
So
card.
Time Spinning Witch now has because Time Spinning Witch was printed, you have a mana dork that replaces itself, which is broken, that you can use on both players' turns. Like, does that not seem insane to anyone? Like, that seemed like something that was just like not
Idol of Magic.
What's up?
Are you talking about Idol of Magic?
The two cost statue. Like that's insane. Like you just have a permanent dork that works on both turns and replaces itself. I'm not saying that's like ban worthy or dinosaur surfacing. You have a card that you can automatically just ramp into very, very easily that was not intended to be that way. Like you have all these cards that interact that aren't
It's just one turn earlier though, or like
One
if
turn
you
is
flip your
huge. Cards. These cards.
it
are
is huge. Like I don't disagree with you, but like
These
that's
cards
like
are not designed
it's
to
a-
play. This card is designed to be played on turn 5. And even if you have like the argument of, oh, we already have Sacred Elf, but now you have Sacred Elf on top of a built-in inherent, like I don't have to draw this. I'm just automatically.
no. You don't have Sacred Elf, right? Because the deck requires you to play a mono blue / time stone. So you just don't have Sacred Elf. You don't have the card.
I
You
mean,
have
I
Water
get the
Wizard, which dies Satama. But as soon as you get out of the cluster mentality, of the New Frontiers mentality, go to cluster, then you lose Sacred Elf, you lose Water Wizard.
Let's throw Sacred Elf out of the mix then. I
Sure.
have an inherent built-in. You cannot stop this with the exception of Shackles, but we're in cluster, so that doesn't exist. You cannot stop this. You cannot respond to this. Built-in, every awakening in my deck, it now costs 1 less. That is an issue.
And that is what your ruler does.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
your ruler ability.
better than divinity? That is like the power level
That
you're
is-
comparing to.
That's insane. Like,
Yeah,
to
I
me,
think that's a great question. I think that's a great question for players that are trying to play this game to say competitively, like, do I want to play Time Spinning Witch and have an extra mana every single turn and like think about what are my odds
Very
of drawing
specific
Idol of
mana.
Magic? Yeah, what are my odds of drawing Angel Statue?
yeah.
Like, how broken is this actually going to be? like that kind of stuff. I think that's great. And when you have to compare it to Divinity, and you say Divinity is like a competitive mechanic that can compete with this, I think that's exactly where we want to be. I think that with Scheherazade especially getting banned, I think that Rhea is an incredibly competitive ruler that will actually benefit a lot from a lot of the new Lich King cards. And like Rhea and the Lich King, or I don't know what the fuck his name is. Like, I don't know.
Sounds weird when you say Lich King, but it's just Lich, I think. But yeah.
Well, yeah, it's not Lich. No, Lich is the discard guy. It's the other guy. It's the discard.
No, his name is also Lich.
Are they both Lich? I thought Lich was the
I
big
think
guy.
so. There's the token's also called Lich too. They use Lich a lot. So
Yeah, let's just say, like, for the sake of me knowing what game we're talking about here.
Yeah, so the discard ruler. Like, I think Rhea suddenly becomes viable. Like, obviously, Last Aid's still a card, but it's a lot less of a problem when your opponent doesn't have it turn one every game. Keurig still gets to do Keurig things. Like, obviously, like the biggest change that we're seeing between New Frontiers and the new set, or the new cluster, the New Frontiers, is just going to be like a lack of dual stones. But like, it's not so much of a problem because like a lot of the old rulers like just don't care. Like, Time Stone, which is still going to be blue-green, and it's going to have no problem being blue-green because it plays 4 Idol, Magic, and Angel Statue. Heel's going to be a green deck. It's going to abuse the shit out of Lori, but be a slow deck that will have problems with the more aggressive decks.
Doesn't have a great... The only downside to Gil is it doesn't have a great win con outside of the 4-drop Gil. Like, it wins very, very slowly because there's no way for it to win the game.
Well, I think cards like there are lots of cards that can balance things in the format already. Like, I think it's actually fine in itself. Like Ryan's saying, there's lots of things that will go against other things. Like, for example, Time Spinning Witch makes mana, but so does Fairy, right? And he has a specific condition of needing elves, but his mana can be used for anything versus only being used for awakenings.
So Time Spinning Witch is just an example of a bigger problem that I'm trying to throw out here, though, which is that
but I think it's like balanced in the context of the format.
Yeah,
from a design space, I see what you're saying, but like they really did a good job of like making the constraints of Time Spinning Witch not be a design space issue where they have failed with doing that in the past. So I do think they're learning, and like Time Spinning Witch is like a good example of that.
I think it's like an R-right one, but like they didn't think like, okay, we have a card like Dinosaur Surfacing is an insane card to play on turn 4.
I think that's fine. I think that's good. Like that is what your rulers.
It's a strong play.
If you do not have cards like Dinosaur Surfacing, then there is zero reason to play Time Spinning Witch at all. That is like that is why you play the ruler.
Alex is talking about the future of the game. Even if you think Dinosaur Surfacing is like not a problem on turn 4, which I would argue I think it probably fundamentally is. What about like the future awakenings? Like, what about going back to Wanderer? There was like the awakening for getting a move.
But we're going backwards. Like, go forwards. Like, what is it really that hard to design around?
Well, design space is backwards and forwards, so I can see where Brandon's going. But I think you're not designing backwards. You're designing forwards with consideration for what's behind you.
There was something in the Wanderer that was already broken with Spinning Witch. And now, are they really going to not allow themselves to print anything that would make this insane for the next 5 or 6 years? Like,
it's just so easy to design around because you just make awakenings colored.
If we're talking just about Wonder,
all right. So is Alex talking or is Brandon talking? Because you're both cutting in and out, and I'm not sure which one of you is actually talking right now.
If we're talking about Wander, I can name infinite limiting design space cards. One of the biggest
billions. No, absolutely. Like, they've made multiple glaring mistakes in the past when it comes to design space when they're older design. So like, if you're going to compare Time Spinning Witch to older design, I think that like there's just way more problems in the past, and like Time Spinning Witch is just like a passable problem.
That was the one that was brought up. That's the one we were talking about. If you want me to name more, I can. Like a huge one, spinning myths. You can't print a myth that's broken. Like in Wander, you just have to ban that card because now you're just so limited to never being.
I think we have way too many types in this game to even begin to say that having spinning myths is a bad design space because we have freaking wizard cards. We've got like I could probably get if I had $1 for every different type of card that we had in this game, I would be really, really rich. Like just ridiculously.
Now there's like you have to think of like they changed the enter ability, so now you can spinning myth Susano and get its enter abilities. That's broken. That's like okay, I'm spinning.
It's pretty good.
Oh, there's 32.
Hold on.
He can be played for 3 in most scenarios anyway, because Dragon's so relevant of a type, right? Like,
on top of having Susano, I now have all the other myths that I have, and that's just like
all like 5 of them. All 5 myths are just so busted in design space, right? Because they use that type so often.
When the first Wander ban list came out, I used to say this to. I think I had this discussion with Steph Shaw. We had a debate about whether or not to print I think it was her. I don't remember if she was on my side or against me, but there was a debate about whether to ban Hook or to ban Telefairy Tale, and I argued Telefairy Tale because I'm like, this is a card that just becomes broken again at some point because you are going to print another broken fairy tale that just becomes broken with this card. This is an example of a card that limits line space because now you can't print another broken fairy tale. Or
it's so easy. It's so easy. It's just like the easiest fucking thing to do is to not print broken fairy tale. You print a broken card. You're like, hey, is this a fairy tale? Oh shit,
yeah,
it is. And you just fucking turn it into a fairy tale with an E.
Whereas, for example, Hook had like 4 ways in the format to break it. Like, there's just so many ways you could play
like,
Hook.
If you want to talk about like actual problematic past,
print an E-drop fairy tale, I can't do that anymore because I have a card that is literally limiting my ability.
That's so fucking fine. It's just not. It's not
so
line space.
I think it's basically the easiest way to say this is that I don't think any game that I've ever played has had a consistent design space philosophy where I've said that they've ever printed a set where they haven't considered the fact that this is going to ruin something in the future design space, and they've taken the initiative and done it anyway and said, I have to take this because there's no way I can advance this game without affecting future design space in a potentially negative way. It's just impossible to have perfect design, and it's just not a thing you can really anticipate.
So that's why I disagree. So that's why I agree with that, and that's why I don't like to use Wander examples, because it's just like, okay, of course, 3 years from now, we're going to have an interaction that's insane.
I'm just trying to talk about time splitting, Mitch, because that was like the thing that was brought up. Like, you were talking about time splitting being the design space issue.
Eliminating,
it's just not,
which was just the card that got mentioned at the time.
Right,
so
but that's why we were talking about it, right?
It's not a design space issue. If you want to talk about design space issues, in my opinion, there are exactly 2 cards that have been issues. It's Lumia and Fox, and those are the only 2 cards, in my opinion, that are like actual like cards that just sincerely, directly, and like overwhelmingly inhibit your ability to print future cards.
I agree.
And both of them. So problem fucking solved, right?
Yeah.
Lumia is a no-brainer because it literally affects like 1/3 of the game. Like that is
pretty much any card could potentially interact with it.
Yeah, I agree with you that Lumia, but Lumia I feel like goes without mentioning that this card literally impacts 1/3 of the game. Like, how the fuck did this card ever get printed? On the ruler side, it said blink.
And it's not good. Like, think about how long this card has been in the fucking game for 2 years. It has never hit tier 0. It has been tier 1 for like 25% of the time. And that's like, okay, like the more cards you print, the better that card's going to get, obviously. But like, they printed this card and it was just like not sincerely overwhelming. It's just like, it's still bad design. It's like they printed it. They broke it.
I think you can easily do bad design without the card being broken.
Yes,
it's very, very easy to do. But that said, I think a lot of the time that just happens in every card game. I've never seen a card game where you haven't had bad design. Yeah, you can have a perfectly balanced card end up being broken.
So that's the thing, though. Just because every card game has bad design doesn't mean it's like, okay, I'm not going to complain about it. It's like, oh, well.
No, obviously you're going to complain because you play the game. You're going to be like, well, this is fucking shit. Why would I put up with this, right? But
I expect even with Argent Saga, we will make a mistake at some point.
That's why I didn't apply for the design team. I just want to call you guys out on your shit.
Exactly. Everyone will make mistakes. And at that point, I hope someone calls me out and says, hey, this is bad fucking design. Someone fix this shit. And I'll say, yeah, it is bad fucking design. Or Jeff will say, yeah, it is bad fucking design. Let's fix this shit. So I think...
Like, I'm not saying you shouldn't try, because obviously the goal of every design team is to make a game that's fun and enjoyable and balanced, right? But
a card that I don't think is broken, but is bad design, the 0-cost discard spell. Like,
absolutely,
I thought that was okay. Like,
100%.
It's not even broken, but like, hey, let's make a 0-mana discard a random card. Not even you choose, just a random card.
They may as well have just said at the start of the game, discard a random card. Like, that's basically what this does.
That's something I said. Why isn't it you choose? Because if it's you choose, sure, it's 0 cost, but it could bite you in the butt. If you're going against a yellow deck, they're thanking you because you're setting up their reanimation for later on. It could be a bad thing to play that card.
I literally just read this card and I thought, wow, this is a Hearthstone card, basically.
Yeah, why does that card exist? Like, who was like, oh, a 0-cost card, but it brings back a 2-drop, a net of 2 mana, but wait, it's built in and there's no requirements. It just says bring back a 2-drop for free. The way Worlds is looking, we're going to have a deck of 5 zeros. It's going to be like the pump spell, the bring back a guy, the discard a card, and we can just throw these cards in because we don't have to pay mana and they start in our hand.
And
well, to be fair, the pump spell
like
has to be
impacting your nonsense.
What's up?
Pump spells to be machines.
The pump spell. Are you talking about the counters?
And I was kidding
Just
about
like random, like from what we've seen, we're expecting to have like 2 more like 0 cost cards still. So
Well,
we're
and
expecting
that's
to
not
have, like,
including cards that cost 1 but cost 1 less inside of your rune
Yeah,
deck, so
yeah,
they're
exactly.
technically
yeah,
0.
the pump spell was kind of a joke because I actually think
Wait.
that's like kind of an okay card. Like I don't necessarily agree with 0 cost cards, but that one was very like we'll call it the Glepnir of the 0 cost cards, if you will.
Yeah.
Like,
Thank you.
it was acceptable.
Thank you.
enjoy that analogy.
Well, yeah, it's the perfect example of a card that costs 0 and is still entirely balanced. Because I'll be honest, there's not really any way to effectively use the Glepnir. It just doesn't work, right?
Hey,
Yeah.
I topped a GP with 4 Glepnirs in my deck, so I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, and
I mean,
and you're
the
here.
thing
You had 37 regalia in your goddamn deck.
What were you playing? Fucking Caincer? Like.
No, it was all on mono DK.
The point I'm trying to make though is 0 cost cards are typically bad design no matter what they do, unless
Yep.
they are
I agree.
incredibly.
But okay, stop. I want to pause. I want to pause. These are not 0 cost cards. These are runes. They are one-time use 0 cost
Yeah.
abilities.
And they do
Well,
take
the
divinity,
difference
to be
between
fair.
a
They
really big
cost
difference
divinity.
between a 0 cost card and a rune is that you can put like 4 of the 0 cost card in your deck, and you can open 4 of it and be like, wow, Levantine, 3-drop, and I got a swiftness rune
Let me
later.
rephrase then. Inherent 0 cost abilities that net advantage are more broken than 0 cost cards in your deck. They
Are
are
enter abilities 0 cost abilities?
what?
Technically, yes,
Are
I would say they are because they
abilities
trigger on enter,
0
right?
cost abilities.
What are what 0 cost abilities?
Are
Enter,
abilities
enter.
0 cost abilities?
Are they 0 cost abilities? I mean, do they cost mana?
They don't.
Yeah.
So are you saying that all enter abilities should just be banned from the game? Is that what you're telling me here?
Just
trying to play devil's advocate.
Every
Okay,
resident
my
can
thing
go to
was that-
combat and attack for free except the golems.
What the fuck?
Attacking is a free ability.
Broken.
Tap
Oh my
abilities
God.
don't
Alright.
cost anything.
The entirety of Force Soul is degenerate. We should ban
And it's
everything.
so-
Any resident that can attack should be banned. Cost 0.
Free.
I think we understand where Alex's design philosophy comes from. Is everything should have a
It-
huge cost, and if it doesn't have it, then it's broken. And it
I
should
think
be
this
gone.
is-
In
All
every
stones should cost
resonator,
1.
Argent Saga must pay mana to attack.
We
So I
draw
will
a card
say-
for free every turn.
If I want to throw a little bit of my
my
design
goodness.
philosophy out there, I am actually of the opinion, like if I were making my own card game, everything sucks. Like no joke. Like, we were playing Summon Skull format and Mechanical
So-
Chaser, the best fucking 18.
That's
the best
not fun.
So here's
I-
the biggest thing about design
actually
that I'm gonna
found
three, and I'm not a
not
game
fun.
designer or anything like that. But the idea is, it's very easy to make everything perfectly balanced, but that's not a game.
Yes, and it's funny you say that too because Jeff had said that to me. He's like, no one wants to play a game that's perfectly balanced. That sucks.
If they wanted to play a game that's perfectly balanced, they would just play chess.
Yep. And my friends have said the same thing to me. So like, even though that is my personal design philosophy, that's not what I'm implementing. Like, I understand we have to make broken cards. There has to be a best deck. It just matters how much of the best deck is that. It's like kind of like Magic's philosophy, where okay, if a deck, Brandon said it best. If the format is Rune and Magic, when a deck has a 60 to 70% win ratio across the board. In Force of Will, if the format is unplayable, it's because a deck has like a 90% win ratio across the board. So like that's the difference between Magic and Force of Will.
It's well, all we really want is just a format that we had in Lapis Cluster before Prussia got printed.
Like I would even argue the
The
MPR
LEL
format,
format
like
was like just
That was
phenomenal.
beautiful.
The LEL meta was probably the best meta we've had in the last 2 years, I would say.
Yeah, I remember like looking and reporting on and just following the top 8s and stuff, and just being like, it was fun to look at it because each one was different in some way, and you never knew who was going to get first place, who was going to be in the top 8. It was genuinely like only the good players were there
yeah,
with
like
whatever
Val,
deck
Val
they went
3.0
there.
came out of nowhere,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah, it was
these
awesome.
rogue
Like,
decks
talk
that would
about
just
that
rush
format.
out of. That was like
Because
a great format. I love that format.
I don't
you
even think that
had
was
some broken shit going on, right? You had
So many broken
Fox.
things, like ridiculous
You had-
quantities.
We just talked about how Lumia Hook is like one of the most like inhibiting design space things ever like imaginable, but like it was competitive. You had Feasting Wyber, you had Val 2, you even had Val 3. Like you had just so many viable decks.
Dark
doing just, like,
Alice.
you didn't have Dark Alice, that wasn't a deck. You had so many broken decks doing broken things that were just so much better than Dark Alice. Like you just it was just so Like it was not only like it was diverse, it was competitive, it was fun, and sometimes you just had bad matchups, and that I think that's like what the core of like I want formats where there are 4 viable decks, because when you have 3, you have this like fucking bullshit triangle or one deck beats one deck beats one deck beats one deck. When you get to 4, you got some like weird matchups going on.
You get road
can come in
decks.
out of anywhere.
Yeah.
Like 4 deck minimum is like where you want competitive formats to be. And at the same time, I say that, and I also hate the Hearthstone meta where they have like 7 viable decks at a time, and it's just.
Well,
like,
I'm really glad that you mentioned Hearthstone, because Alex was going into win rates, and like Hearthstone, for example, a broken deck in Hearthstone is like 70% win rate. But it's really important to mention that there's so much different classes in Hearthstone that are always present at all times because they're forced by the game mechanics. So like for example, in Hearthstone, a 60% win percentage, in my opinion, and what I've seen from like pirate meta and stuff, is like really oppressive. Like the fact that they can win 60% of the games against 9 different classes and every different kind of deck. It really does depend on the game, versus like just saying in general 70% is healthy, like, or 90% is unhealthy.
70%
or
is actually even higher than Blizzard accepts. Blizzard nerfs decks at 60%. I mean, like it's
because it's so much different in Hearthstone, right?
Yeah.
Yes, but Ryan was talking about
even
deck
don't they
Going
nerf
back to
decks like 60%?
what Alex was saying, because like honestly, like you guys keep talking about Yu-Gi-Oh and Hearthstone because you guys are degenerates, but Magic is the real game.
Wow.
With and Magic aims for 3 competitive decks like at all times, and so I think like the 3 to 4 number is correct. And I'd really like to.
Like if they have 3 the same deck in the same like top 8 of a Pro Tour, they like look to hit the deck or something.
No, so they think that the best formats are top 8s that look like 3-2-2.
3-2-2. Okay, is that what it is? And then
3-2-2 or like 3-2-2-1, 3-3-2 are kind of like what they aim for.
I know
3-2-2-1 is really what I love to see. I think.
Yeah, that's probably fair. And what I don't know, I do follow Magic a little bit. I follow the design articles and stuff that what's his name, Mark Rosewater puts out and stuff. Yeah. So I follow that more now that I do the Argent Saga stuff to get like some idea of their design philosophies and try to learn from their mistakes. But I don't know exactly. Is it like a 60% win ratio across the board? They start nerfing the deck, or what's the win ratio?
Okay, but keep in mind that Magic decks can just lose to themselves. So like that percentage kind of gets a little bit more obtuse. Like every deck has just like some percentage chance to just not hit, which is like.
Doesn't that like also apply to your opponent, so it'd be negligible? So like the best deck has an X% chance to hit itself, but your opponent also.
Like,
okay.
That it's a little bit, but like decks that are slower and require more lands can kill themselves faster than like decks that can win on 1 land. So like that's a little bit not the same. But anyway, and also if both decks can kill themselves, that puts the number closer to 50% in aggregate. So
like
it still works that way.
I read a lot of the Magic design philosophy stuff too, and the only reason I reference Hearthstone and Yu-Gi-Oh so much is because they're, in my opinion, one of the most easily accessible games, because you literally can just jump right into them. You don't need to go learning all these different philosophies or doing anything else. You could just sit down and play either of these games pretty easily. You won't do well in them, but they're very approachable. They're probably the easiest casual games.
I think I can accept that Hearthstone is easy to jump into. Yu-Gi-Oh!
I literally see 10 people a week jump into Yu-Gi-Oh! They might not stick into it, but it's so easy for them to sit down and jump into it. Whereas if I see Force of Will or Magic or any of these other games,
mechanically Yu-Gi-Oh! Is easy. Like based on like
it's a shit game, but it's so easy to pick it up and yeah. I mean, you need a magnifying glass to read the cards, but I mean,
yeah. I was gonna say like whenever I pick up a Yu-Gi-Oh! Card, I like can't even finish it before putting it down. I don't know.
I can literally give you a starter deck and you can play the game in 10 seconds. Like, it's the easiest
honestly,
game.
I've written college papers that were shorter than some of the effect text on Yu-Gi-Oh!
I was going to say, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Starter deck can qualify as a novel, I think, like legally.
But you don't even need to read the cards. You look at the picture, you're like, okay, I'm going off. I learned this in 5 minutes because the guy across from me did the same thing 5 minutes ago. Like, it's not hard to pick up. Hearthstone's the same way. Half the cards don't even freaking say what they do on the card. You just have to play it to find out, right? But you'll learn that in 10 minutes and you're good to go. That's why I go to them as like examples, because they're the ones people go to the quickest, and they're the most general examples you can give. Whereas ones like Magic, although a lot of the times they do things better or they're been around for longer, they're a lot more specific examples.
The first time I played that magnetic card, I tried to click it on top of the minion, and I accidentally played it to the right.
Those are
and I walked
fucking
right behind
retarded.
because
It's the
of it.
stupidest
And I was
mechanic I've
What
seen.
did I just fucking do? I
Grab
just like
the magnetic minion, it like lights up the mech. So you kidding me? Like it's so
after that moment, I did that and learned very fucking quickly. But at that first instance, I was like, "Holy shit!" I'm
you
the
had just a
retard.
little bit of patience, and you held your mouse over.
Well, like Hearthstone's really good at being intuitive but being retarded at the same time. Like for example, how many people play Wild Growth at 10 mana and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't give me 11th mana. I get to fucking draw a card."
Yeah, so
But
like
that's right design. That design is brilliant because it gives you a.
It's smart but retarded at the same time because as a new player, you're not gonna be like, "Oh, I'll play this. I'll draw a card." Am I right?
I don't want to get too much into the Hearthstone hole here. I don't want to go too much down the Hearthstone.
Ben is fucking triggered right now. He's just going into a rage.
Dude, I am like triggered out of my mind right now. Like any insult to Hearthstone's design, I take this as a personal offense. But I find Hearthstone to be like
It's
so
really polished. It's really polished.
I personally don't want to get too much in the Hearthstone discussion because I've been having a lot of discussions about Hearthstone recently. I now have a lot of personal feelings attached to my opinions about Hearthstone, so I don't want to get too much into this on the stream. Otherwise, we'll be here for the next 3 hours talking about why fucking Nourish draws 3 cards. Like, I just don't want to get into it. So, anyways, we were talking about design space in ruins.
So Malagos for Hall of Fame. What do you guys think?
I was actually okay. Now we're going down the hole. So I'm
no. I hate the talking.
Me and my friend had this discussion. I said, Elsher, this is my friend who's like very, very good at Hearthstone. I was like, what do you think needs to go to the Hall of Fame? He's like, Malagos, no questions asked. Malagos just gone. Get it the fuck out. Like, get rid of it.
But he's got the best battle cry. They can't do it.
I actually don't even remember what his battle cry is.
I am the essence of magic.
It's second only to Jiraxis.
You face Lord Jiraxis.
Right.
You are our Lord of the Burning Legion.
So anyway,
what was that, Mike?
Has anybody here heard Malagos' attack sound? Because I'm gonna wager.
Oh no, he doesn't ever get to attack, so it's never.
I've heard it because I've fucked up combos before.
I want to go redirect a little bit back to Brandon's original question: was what the fuck was the point of ruins? Can any?
I honestly know why they did ruins. It makes perfect sense to me, even though I don't agree with the way they did it, because I think none of us can really agree that we wanted ruins in the game. But what they're trying to do with this cluster, and the reason I can see why they did this, was because they're trying to reinvent themselves. They're trying to start fresh while still keeping what they've got. So the only real way to do that is to introduce what they see as a new mechanic that refreshes the game. I don't agree with that. Like I did say earlier that I think Synchro was like really great for Yu-Gi-Oh because it refreshed things, it kept things fresh, made it very specific, and it kind of added a lot of skill to it. But I don't really think Force of Will needed another layer added to it. I think it's fine the way it was in general. There was no need for a new mechanic. But I can see why they did it. That's what they're trying to go for, right?
No, I
actually have a theory behind that too. I just a theory that I wanted to throw out.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that one of the big things about runes, as both Alex and Ryan have said this multiple times, it's like there's a discussion going on here about, is a ruler that comes with 5 extra spells at the beginning of the game better than any of the Ray rulers that already have like built-in mechanics? And I think that that's the debate that runes were supposed to spark. The big thing about them is that I think introducing cards with these runes means that you get cards that are at like somewhat contesting with the Ray rulers, despite how powerful they are. But then later on, once they start trying to, from what I'm predicting, trying to power down the game, trying to get it to a level where it's like not just all this busted ruler shit. They got all the most powerful runes and just leave us with a power level that's at a level where they can start fresh from the ground up. Because at this point, if you try to power creep, like reverse power creep down the game again, you're just going to get a format of only Ray rulers again. And I think that's brain dead retarded, but something that'll obviously have to happen. So the fact that they can have just like ways to pull out the really busted shit, pull out these runes that just spin the game in the wrong direction, and then just rearrange it so that they can focus on just a lower power curve and just worry about trying to balance things with the ban list for Wanderer, you have a more established game going towards the future.
I could actually say you're objectively right. Oh, sorry. You go ahead, Colin.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and I agree with that. Switching out runes is way easier than what they have been doing. We just saw, in my opinion, the huge mistake of not banning Sherry first with the first wave of bans, and that's just my opinion. I feel like she'd just been banned back then because it looks just bad on them that they banned these other cards and it didn't affect Sherry at all, and then they had to go back and go ban Sherry. I feel like that doesn't look good on them. So banning a rune is way easier, and if it doesn't work, reinstating that rune is not a big deal. It's just a random rune. But there's that side of it. But I also personally think it feels more like them trying to a roundabout way of going back to the root of the game. The root of the game, at least when I started playing, was, hey, I have this ruler. I love this ruler. I'm going to build a deck around this ruler.
Yep.
Because it's cool.
Absolutely.
Now, we don't have that anymore because you have to play this ruler. But with runes, you now have this new thing. It's kind of like, I want to play this ruler, but it's also, I have these runes I like, and they go inside this ruler. I'm going to customize this rune deck. And this could be optimistic, and I've said, you guys probably haven't heard me say this, so I'll say it again. I think that the rune deck has the potential to break the cycle of like net decking it and master decks, where in the sense of like, if you go and you net deck a deck, you're gonna take those 60 card, you're gonna take the 40 card deck, you're gonna take the rune, you're gonna take the stone deck, you're gonna take one or two of the runes. The rest of the runes are going to be your personal take on the deck. It's going to be your flavor. The runes are going to stick to the person, not to the ruler. Because as we go through the sets, we've only seen a couple of the runes. More runes are going to be released set after set, and it's going to probably release into the next cluster. They're going to continue with the runes. And I think the runes are going to become, at a certain point, especially with how easy it is to ban overpowered runes, a personal play style preference. I personally like playing a certain way when I go, if I don't do it often, but so, if like, I do go and net deck something, I'm going to take out usually 4 to 10 cards out of the deck.
And I love it.
Match it to my playstyle.
I love it when people do that because those are the people I get to beat the most. They're like,
well,
yeah,
I'm just gonna cut you off right there, Alex. I think Colin has more or less actually hit exactly what the company said, because I don't know if any of you guys actually read it. I know Alex doesn't read it, but anything that the company's actually written about why they're doing the well, he said he isn't reading any of that stuff about why they're doing the rune system, and literally the whole article was basically that. Basically, when they started Force of Will, that's what it was about. It was picking your ruler and building your deck around your ruler, and they had a very small power level. And in Valhalla, they experimented with really heavy drawbacks on if your ruler died, you lost half your life and all this other stuff. But they felt like that wasn't the right balance, so they started making rulers a little more powerful, and that's what the Grim Cluster was. And then they just felt like maybe if the ruler took a bigger part of the deck, and then we got the stuff we had in Alice and Lapis Cluster, and they're just. They don't really feel like the ruler should be as big of an involvement in the deck as it should be. I mean, I don't. Again, I don't really agree with the whole runes are the way to balance the rulers. I'm with Alex on this one. I think runes are a really lazy way to balance things because you just deploy things. Oh, this didn't work out. Okay, we'll ban the rune or whatever. But it's the same problem as banning rulers. It still takes a whole set to adjust to this and to get this going. But I understand their design philosophy is that they want to dial rulers back to be less of an impact on the game, and I think runes do a good job of making them less of an impact because it's good enough that they're going to compete with Alice. Sorry, not Alice. They're going to compete with the Rhea Cluster rulers, but not to the point where they actually have anything that specifically sets them above any other ruler. They just have divinity, right?
I'm glad the company went and acknowledged, hey, we're idiots and you can't actually fix rulers as they come out. So instead, we'll release them all in the beginning so we know right away if we make a mistake and we can address it. So I don't like the fact that they're dumb, but I do like the fact that they know they're dumb because a lot of stupid people don't know they're stupid. So it's great that they know and they're
included.
What'd you say?
Nothing, Alex. What are you talking about? Continue.
So I'm glad they acknowledge, they basically realize that where they fuck up is that they have a ruler, it comes out late, and then they take forever to ban it because they don't realize the mistake, and then it ruins 6 months of their game. The thing I don't like is, number one, we have much less of a selling incentive for boxes now. I feel like rulers were a huge incentive to buy boxes for players, and now that incentive is gone. And that's not just like an anecdotal. Like
I think this is way better personally, but
I think they missed a huge opportunity with that. They should have gone with the runes. They could. I think the boxes would have been perfectly fine with the runes replacing the rulers. If they did with the runes, what they did in Caster Chronicles with like deities and the Soulbond servants, where it's this beautifully completely different design cards, change the borders, just design the card from the ground up. So when you get it, you're like, oh, this is like a piece of art I'm getting. If they did it out with the runes, I'd be like, I want to pull that. I don't want to pull a ruler. I want to pull that rune that's spit. But so I'm kind of disappointed. It's just like a bland looking card, and that makes it less.
Well, like it's really interesting that you bring up the Caster Chronicles, because I feel like that's where the company messes around with whatever the hell they feel like, and because it's a new thing that
a lot of that carried over to Force of Will.
Because well, they actually that's where they fuck around with stuff. Is where they experiment. They throw random new mechanics in. They throw in archetypes, and I feel like that's actually seeing a lot of stuff implemented in Force of Will. Like for example, the enter mechanic being what it is exactly right now with the new cluster was literally how it's been in Caster Chronicles since that one. Because that's where they fuck around with stuff. And I think that's actually
was introduced in there.
I think that's a good way to do it, is to test it outside of Force of Will and see how in its own separate design space this is how things work, right? Because they've had a lot of good reception and they got a lot of bad reception. It's really easy for them to go and see this in its own vacuum versus saying, oh, well, in Cherry Cluster or like in this format specifically, this is a bad problem. Or well, it's basically what it is, right? But in this format specifically, this card is bad or this card is good, or this mechanic won't work or what have you, right? It's easy to see in a separate game with the similar mechanics, this effect works very well. It's good for players. It's really intuitive. We can change things, but there's going to have this impact on our current game. What's the downsides to that, right? And I'm going to be honest, I really like how we're talking about all this stuff, because game design is a really big thing that people don't really understand. It's really complicated. No one gets it perfect because it's really hard. But at the end of the day, every game implements game design, and it's something that we need to understand as players because we can see where things come from, right, and where they're going. So I don't think anyone and one of us are actually right, but I think it's good that we all talk about it, right?
Yeah, I don't think that game design is perfect. It's just like game design is.
It's always evolving.
You can't make everyone happy. Like you're appealing to as many people as possible, and there's just so many different opinions out there. Like we take a lot for granted as like the competitive player base for most of us. That we're like the dissent, like we're the correct opinion.
We're like the 1% of people.
Yeah, how the game is like supposed to be played in like the upper echelon of like perfect play. But like when it comes down to a lot of like different levels of play, like just multiple people see the game very differently. It's just like something I feel like we don't.
But you said you can't please everyone, and I'm not saying that I don't have an answer to this, but I still have not heard who this rune deck pleases. Like you can't make everyone happy, but who is happy with this rune deck? Like is anyone like? I don't know.
Well, Colin, for example, just said he was happy.
With the exception of the zero cost cards,
yeah,
I'm overall been I like the idea of the rune deck. I think it's gonna take a couple sets for it to set in when we actually have variety of runes.
This deck, that's all.
for more rune variety, but I like the idea of it and how it. Once we're going to be printing out proxies now that we actually have full decks, and so I feel like once I play with it more, I have a better grasp of it and have a better opinion of it. But as of right now, I didn't like it at first when they first announced it. You could probably look back in the US group of my comments on it, but I like the idea it's going for, and if it worked out perfectly, I think it could lead to a better set than we've had since Alice Cluster, if it worked out correctly.
What is it that you like about it, though? Do you know specifically?
It's kind of like what I touched on earlier, is the sort of personalization of it, being able to take what is essentially a blank slate of a ruler. Like for me, for example, I like the machines are my favorites so far, and I like that machine ruler visually, everything about it. And I'm going to take that rune deck, and I know for sure I'm going to have the master rune in there and the zero cost rune. And I don't know what other runes I'll put in there, but I can tell you right now it's going to probably be a lot different than what other people will do in there, and it might evolve throughout the game and stuff like that.
It's your personal take on a template that the company has basically put out, but you're allowed to change whatever you feel would be either fun for you or the most competitive for you.
The difference
and
of
adjust
like
it as such.
If I had BFA Machina, which is like, oh, I like machines and I have this ruler. I kind of don't want to use this ruler because of the effects. Now I can be like, oh, I have this machine ruler. It doesn't have any effects. I can put the effects I like on it so I can play it. So it makes all rulers technically playable on some level.
I was really hoping when they announced runes, they would be more like a snap-on effects versus like cards that you cast. Like
I agree.
Like you said, like giving like 200 attack or swiftness, bad example, but like target attack or something like that. Like these were abilities you would tack on.
You can trigger.
You would just show them at the beginning of the game which abilities you're throwing on or which runes that you're picking, and they would affect the game passively. Is what I was hoping.
I agree. That's what I thought too. But
back to what Colin said. I've played machines more than any other deck so far. Would it disappoint you to learn that, like, you're obviously playing the Master Rune and the Zero Cost, which you said. You haven't listed the best rune in the game so far, which is Scrap and Rebuild, which is the best machines rune. You're always going to play the 0 mana discard 1 rune because it's the best rune spoiled so far. So if I told you that you have no choice but to play 4 of at least those 4, does that disappoint you? Does that make you like runes less?
Whilst I'll preface with saying I would be very surprised and disappointed if that 0 cost discard is not one of the first runes to get banned, honestly. But
I just don't think it will be.
Yeah, I don't think it will.
It's poor design, but I don't actually think it's
like it's
for something.
It's not overpowered, but it is broken.
Well,
but anyway, let's let Colin finish.
A little overpowered. I'm starting to encroach upon the opinion that it's a little too good.
Well, even outside of the overpowered, the lens I look at it, which is obviously not the lens.
You don't have to have a specific ruler or play style to play. I think is what Colin's going at, right?
Well, as far as the overpowered thing, though, the lens that I look at it, and obviously is not the lens the company looks at it, is from what a money perspective, business perspective. If there's a rune that's making me not...
They don't even care about money anymore.
Hold on. Let Colin finish this point right now.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're good. Well, no, I was to say, if there's a rune that's making it so that when people go to the locals, every time someone plays that rune, they get upset because they discard a card that they want to play, and that happens every time they play, they're going to stop wanting to play the game. Well, I'll say it once again, that's what happened with Sherry. And we have people, and for example, a player that a lot of people probably knew back in the day, Jan, he doesn't...
Ryan's face. Ryan's face.
he
I
doesn't...
remember Young Pulse.
Yeah.
Back in the day. Continue.
He's our local, one of our locals, and he stopped playing because of Sherry. Because he said there's no reason to play anything else and all that stuff. And we had other people who lost. We lost people from Sherry. We lost people before that from Prisha. And before that, the locals was 100% dead because of Reflect Refrain. So
I think it kind of... Oh, sorry. Keep going.
I'm sorry. I was rambling on. But the point I was just getting at is that even if it's not overpowered at the competitive level, they need to look at a business perspective. If people stop playing at the local level, it doesn't matter how balanced the competitive side is. If no
I think a lot of people just kind of lose scope because a lot of people just know their local store, and that's what they know the competitive game is. I feel like a lot of people just abstract themselves from what the TCG is. So you got 3 levels. You got your local, or you got the players, the kitchen table players. They play at home. They have their friends. They might buy single cards every now and again, but more or less they go through packs and starter decks and that kind of stuff. Then you have your LGS, your local game store. They got the local games. They got 8 to 10 or 20 or 50 people, depending how big they are, and they play every week and they have fun. And then there's the competitive players who go travel to events. They go to win prizing. They go to win. They play
those
to win.
Fuckers.
They go. Yeah, fuck those guys, right? But the vast majority of people are down here at the kitchen table level. Like it's true with Magic. It's true with Yu-Gi-Oh. It's true with Hearthstone. Like these people are just casual players. They play with their friends. They play for fun. If they see a broken mechanic that all their friends are playing and it makes the game unfun for them, they're just gonna go play another game where they can play for fun, and they don't really give a fuck about what the game has for them. It's just, is it fun or is it not fun to play this casually, right? And then on the local level, and this is a lot of players see this, and this is what they see, is just that this is where you go on a weekly basis. Even if you're not playing at the locals, you'll see that there's people there. They're having fun. They're just having these big variety of decks. You might not play in the locals. You might not even show up for their weekly tournaments, but you'll see that this game has a big following. It might get you interested. You'll look around. But if you see that there's no one at the locals, or if you play with your friends and they play these overpowered cards, and there's no way you can beat them, you're probably just going to give up, and the game isn't going to do well, right? And that's the kind of thing that Colin is going into, because when you go to your locals and Priscia OTKs you 6 times, or the Fox just immediately destroys you, you're not going to say, oh, wow, I hope the company bans Fox. You're going to say, all right, what's the newest Magic deck, or what's the newest Yu-Gi-Oh deck, because I'm just going to jump ship right now.
Yep. I think inherently that happens in every card game too, where like
absolutely.
There's always a most broken deck, and there's always someone who shows up to locals with it. I think what keeps these things in balance is, number one, a lot of good players have the sense not to kill their local, and when they know they're going to win every week with the best deck, because they're so much further above. Like if you're not at a hyper competitive locals, because some locals have 5 of the best players in the game at it. So your locals is hyper competitive, and you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff as much, versus you're the best player at your locals by 3 tiers, and you know to keep your locals alive, you have to play kind of crappier decks.
The problem is, even if you're not that ultra competitive guy, there's always the one fucking guy who shows up.
Yep.
Play Sherry every week because I'm going to win, and I like packs, and I love packs, so I'm going to play every week, and I'm going to win with Sherry, and I'm going to get 5 packs, and then I don't give a fuck if every person I play has a really bad experience. I'm just going to do it because I want to win the packs.
So the second thing, too, is I feel like a lot of competitive players don't go to locals, and that's why a lot of locals thrive sometimes, is that competitive players just don't go to locals.
No, it's true, absolutely. Like, I agree.
Like after a while, I think at first they do, but once they get so good that they realize locals are just a waste of time per money ratio, they just stop going. Unless your locals has like 50 players and insane prizing, I think a lot of players just say, why am I going to go? I'm winning $30 like when I can go win like a paid trip to Japan or whatever at an actual GP, like, and I know I don't have to play at locals every week to get there. So I think there are a lot of checks and balances that just happen on their own. But then you get, like, sometimes you do have decks like Priscia Miss, where it's literally anybody can show up.
Hey, you leave Priscia Miss alone.
Yeah, anyone can just show up with this deck and just kill you on turn 2. It doesn't matter who you are. It's not even like Scheherazade, where at least if you're like a really, really horrible player, or like even like a not great player, you can still get beat by a decent player playing somewhere else. It's literally just like, I have Leviathan, I have Death Scythe, I have a Sacred Elf, you're dead.
I absolutely agree, and it's not even. Well, I'll just quickly finish my point.
Yeah,
It's not even about like how easy it is or how much skill is involved or whatever. It's just literally just involving their perception, right? Like I don't care how easy or how hard it is to play Priscia Myth. If you can literally go on turn 2, slap down 3 cards, and punch your opponent in the face for 4K damage, they're gonna be like, okay, well that was pretty shitty. I don't know why the fuck I'm doing this anymore. Like, what's even the point? Even if no one else is playing it or whatever, you're just gonna take a second guess and go, this feels really bad. Why am I even involved with this? And it's something that a lot of games go through. Like you said, no game is really immune to this. I think the biggest ones were obviously the Priscia meta, but Hearthstone had the big thing with the Pirate meta too, where you literally died in 4 turns and there's nothing you could really do to stop it other than get really, really lucky.
Yep. So
and this feels bad.
So before we, I
just
don't
want
know.
to like chime in here real quick.
Go ahead.
This is like what you guys just talked about is one of the reasons I actually really, really like the reflector frame meta, and this is like something that Brandon's talked about. Like he's terrified of the runes becoming like hyper consistent, and I feel like hyper consistency wasn't even the problem of the reflector frame meta. It was just like you always had so many options on top of having like one of your options be hyper consistency. Like you had the pump, you had the untap, and you had the just filter, and just
see ya, Brandon.
All right, Brado, take it easy. But yeah, I always felt like Reflector Flame was like my favorite part of Force of Will, and it was like my first tournament was GP Houston, and I got the salty 9th place. But like after that, it was like the Blazer Thulu like ARG format, and then my first GP was Reflector Flame format, and that was like where I really got into competitive Force of Will. Like I won 2 GPs in that format. I played in the World Championship after that. Like it was just that was where I got into Force of Will, and that was like just where I had the most fun, was just where Reflector Flame was having me do the most things, the most like options.
Wait, Ryan, back up a second.
Yeah.
When I played you at ARG in Jersey, my first ARG event.
That was Blazer.
Well, that was Reflect.
Was it?
Yeah, because both of us were playing.
Yeah, it was Necrolance. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, that was when you were just getting into the game, because I was also just getting into the game, and I thought you were way better than I was.
The first AC that you went to where your brother was playing, like you were playing Blazer Thulu, and your brother was playing Rezard. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about a different one. I'm talking about Ryan was talking
about. It
about
was after
Blazer
that, yeah.
Thulu. the one after that was where I
I'd only been in the game for like 4 months or so.
I don't
Yeah, I've
think
been
there
for
was
like
an
2.
There wasn't an ARG. Are we talking about an ARG? I don't think
Yeah,
there was.
I think it was a states championship. I think.
States or something.
Yeah, it was
They
the
used to
first
have
day.
those little
ARG
states
states.
championships back
Yeah.
because I remember back then Forza wasn't really developed in terms of like having GPs and stuff, right? So it was all
Yeah.
like
That was
thrown
the first
together
time I
ad
went
hoc
there with,
stuff.
I went with like Royce, Valentino.
Yeah, because I played against like you and Royce and Valentino like locals all the time. Back
Yeah.
when you lived in the good area, you know.
Back when I was
With all your
not on Long
buddies.
Island.
Anyway, I forgot what I was gonna say.
You're talking about the Reflect format being
Yeah.
your
We were talking about
like
how
your
much
favorite
you love-
format in terms of
That's
like.
just what I
gameplay.
don't remember why I was talking about that, but it was something that
Well,
triggered that. I just
well,
wanted to talk about
I
why
understand where you're
like
going
Reflect
from
was-
because I feel like that's the really big disconnect between competitive players and casual players. Because
Yeah.
competitive players
that's
really love
exactly it.
consistency, right? Because like for
Yes,
example, you were talking about Reflector Frame. There's always this line of play. You always have 100 options you can go. You can always respond to what your opponent is doing. It literally just came down to skill. It literally is you're more skillful than your opponent, and card
The more
consistency did not come
options
into
you
play.
have, the more opportunities you have to outplay your opponent. So if I'm playing Reflect and you're playing Reflect, and I have an IQ above 100 and you do not, like
Rick and Morty fan.
then I just then I get to just like every single option that happens that I get to choose and you get to choose, I get to slowly get ahead of you while you get to just fucking go more brain dead. And it doesn't matter what cards you draw. It doesn't matter if your opening 5 is 15 times better than mine. The longer the game goes on, like the more likely it is I'm going to beat you, just because like I just get to make more proper decisions compared to you, and like that difference will equal out over time. And
that's why. Oh, sorry.
That is why.
Yeah.
You go ahead and fill me in.
Competitive players love single deck formats like Sherry or Reflector Frame or whatever because it lets the skill stand out and the cards are just the in between. And this happens in every game. There's always like this one deck format, like for Yu-Gi-Oh's Dragon Rulers. You could say that there are spell books, but they were very, very distant second. It was literally like, which cards do I play in which order? Do I remember my turn order? Do I remember which cards I've used this turn? Do I remember what? And that's Reflector's the same way because you basically had infinite mana with Adam Brawlius and all these other cards. So you could make your turn as long as you want, as long as you played it correctly and traded resources efficiently. You could make sure you had more cards or a better setup or a bigger field presence. And as a competitive player, that's what you want because it lets you use purely your skill to get ahead of your opponent and make sure that you're going to win. Whereas as a non-competitive player, you don't see any of this on this higher level. You're just like, wow, every deck is Reflector Frame. Seems like a great game, am I right?
Yeah, pretty much that. The one thing I will say was like I never even played Alice's World ever. Like I've just literally never played that deck. I played
Technically, I never
Lance,
played it either. But
and then I went right into RR Control, which is like even more just like in depth than Alice's World. Like when you played RR, like 5-color RR Control against Alice's World, it was just like they had exactly 8 threats in their entire deck. It is 5 or 4 Atom Brawly. You've got 4 Flame of the Outer World. You've got 4 Demon Flame. You've got 4 Artemis Bow. You've got 4 Thunder. It's just about like trying to optimize those resources, that hitting those cards, and not like using Apollo to get those cards back. And it was just a lot of fun. And that was like just.
I mean, that's another thing is that there are so many different versions, even between like the Alice's World decks. People would think you're playing Alice's World, but you don't actually have an Alice's World in your deck. You're playing this like Cinderella Turbo where you wipe out their whole board with a Cinderella that no one else has. Or there are so many different versions of this deck, and even from a deck building perspective, it still was a skill exhausting thing, right? Because like you said, you're playing around this meta game where everyone's playing Alice's World, and now all of a sudden you have this out with this one card that you're playing, or maybe it's half your deck, but it's still the same ruler and the same deck, but you're using your own skill in deck building or your own skill in gameplay, and it just extends so far beyond what people see on the level. And I think you basically hit it on the head. It was really fun for you, and it let you exercise your experience, right?
Yeah, I just think that like Runes has the potential to is trying to like go back to that without like being oppressive to the casual player,
because it's different rulers versus the same one. It seems different. Casual players can actually understand that.
Again, right?
Yeah,
like both players have a lot of options, so the better player can make the better decisions regarding their like multiple options. But my concern is that you're just gonna have like the same 5 runes every game. What I really think is gonna happen though, based on what we've seen so far, is you're gonna have like basic like you're gonna have between 3 and 4 like competitive rulers. You're gonna play the Master Rune Guaranteed. You're gonna play the Discard Rune Guaranteed. You're gonna play the best Divinity 2 rune in your color Guaranteed, And then it's a question for the last 2 runes, what I'm thinking. Obviously for blue is scrap and rebuilders, like we talked about, on top of maintenance, which is the 0 cost rune. Like for blue, those are like just guaranteed. I think they're just like far and away the best runes for blue. For other colors, if they're ever potentially viable, like the options come down to, do you want to play Divinity 3 and a Divinity 1? And then like there's actually a lot of viable Divinity 3 runes in every color. Like the Divinity 3 runes are very good. Black has Black Moonbeam and also like -6/-6 your opponent's board. Like green has the draw 3 or like draw a card, bring back 2 stones, or get it from graveyard, or it has deal 4 to your opponent's board. White has like everything has something, right? And I guess like the Divinity 1 runes are pretty weak overall. So the question becomes like, do you even play a Divinity 3 rune? And then do you play your best Divinity 1 rune, or do you just play another Divinity 2 rune? And then the play patterns get more interesting when you're like, okay, are they playing a Divinity 1 rune on top of their Divinity 3 rune so they have 10? Or are they playing, you know, a second Divinity 3 rune where they get to just like, have an option to only activate 4 runes total, but like the power level is different? It just like there's a lot of interesting decisions that go into deck building and then go into like counterplay and just like thinking what your opponent has and what they could play, and then just like there's just a lot of complexity.
There's so much variety,
like,
complexity.
Yeah, I think the last 2 runes for most colors are actually going to like bring a lot to the competitive aspect of the game, and it could be really frustrating at first, where it's just like you have no idea what your opponent's playing. I think for Worlds format, it's going to be like.
I think World is basically, unless it's like the there's a best deck and you're all play it. I think that's how Worlds format should always be. There's not like a best deck, but there's obviously clearly good cards, and the part of you as a player is to fill in the blanks. Like let's say 70% of the deck is guaranteed. You're gonna have 70% of cards that are all good. It's the 30% that's the difference, right? And I
also
like
meta calling, right? Like just
absolutely.
Did everyone else figure out the best deck? Like, is everyone else playing this deck, kind of thing? And just like, am I?
Do they know all the nuances and different changes that could be in factor in that? And I really like the way that they did with the Divinity in terms of it being a casting cost versus a construction thing. Because initially I thought it was like you could only have Divinity 10 as the construction limit, but it's actually as you cast it, it costs you Divinity, right? So you could potentially go over Divinity 10 in your extra deck. You just have to go over the fact that you're not able to cast every one of those cards, right?
Which is probably fine because we have a couple of like really.
I want to stop for a second and say your dog is so cute. That dog.
Which one? He's got 2 that are just
I got
rotating around.
You want the tour?
Oh my god.
That one. That one. We got the big one.
I was really into Ryan's point. I was with him, but I'm like, oh my god, that dog.
The way he like crawled up the shoulder was so cute. Like
yeah, he suddenly just like, you know what? I should be up here, and just jumped right up there.
He is so adorable. Look at him just sitting there.
What's
awesome. His name? Or her name?
This one's Ward.
Ward.
Yeah. We have Ward, Fitz, and Daisy. All our animals are named after characters from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show.
Huh. My grandfather's name was Ward.
Oh, really?
Guys
Yep.
are dweebs.
It's a cool name. Yeah, no, he also likes. You might have noticed during the thing, he likes to try to lick and eat people's noses. So he was trying to do that the whole time.
He was whining a bit too on your arm there.
Yeah.
So I've let it happen.
Is there anything else we need to like cover tonight? Is there something?
I could say thank God Cherry is banned, and we'd have to go through a format with Divinity and Cherry. I mean, that's the thing I can say.
Well, you wouldn't have. No. You don't have to.
They finally decided that they're gonna go with their gut instinct initially and listen to fucking Jeff about this.
We wouldn't have to go through Sherry and Divinity. It would just be Sherry.
I was about to say that exact same thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And but even just if ignoring that one is clearly better than the other, as a new player, you have to be like, well, Divinity is like this one thing, but there's all these specific small nuances that you also need to know, because if it's Cherry versus a Divinity, there's the, like, you can activate Lorite on a Divinity, it doesn't do anything, where if you do it on Cherry, it stops them from using it that turn. Like, I'm really glad they just banned it to stop all
Also, Divinity does cool stuff, but Cherry counters everything.
Same mechanic.
Cherry
I mean, she does. Like I said, the example was that ignoring the fact that she's clearly better than any of the Divinity cards, right?
Yeah.
It's just the small, stupid nuances between her and the actual Divinity mechanic would drive new players retardedly insane. Like,
Sherry is like beta Hearthstone and mechanic is like
Where they delete half the cards.
Post beta Hearthstone, where we have our like brain controls, and I think Pyroblast was 8 too, right? Was Pyroblast 8? Yep, Pyroblast and like brain control for 8. You had what is it? Anybody remember
the rogue card up? I'm trying to think of what it was.
What rogue card?
Yeah, there's one mana, but if you combo it, you draw 2 instead. It's for 1 mana, draw a card.
You guys remember that?
Adrenaline Rush. Adrenaline Rush was it called? Adrenaline Rush. Yeah.
Do you guys remember what was it? Thoughtseize or Mind? What's the one?
Yeah, Thought Steal or whatever. No, it wasn't Thought Steal. The one that gets 1 card. You used to steal it from their hand instead of making a copy of it for 1 mana priest.
Yeah, you used to steal the card. Or the best card in the game was literally that 1/1 imp. That stealth 1/1 imp was broken just because it was a 1/1. The one that on health, that card was actually just insane in beta because it just had 1 attack, so it could trade it. So like that was beta Hearthstone, and now we're hopefully approaching anything but current Hearthstone.
Yeah, well, I mean, I feel like every game wants to be as popular as Hearthstone, but as distant as they actually can to the actual game.
Except for
except for Eternal. It's a really polished game.
Eternal visually just copied and pasted Hearthstone, but then copied and pasted Magic rules.
Yeah, Eternal is just a bastard of like all these different games. Like we can try and be everything, but it does nothing properly. It's the jack of all trades, the master of none.
Yeah, except it's also the master of some for some reason. Yeah, I went hard into Hearthstone for like a month.
Same company that made Eternal also made Pokemon Online and Elder Scrolls Legends. Exact same company.
Man, they struck gold with Pokemon. Pokemon Online is friggin' golden.
I don't think they actively develop it anymore. I think they just made the base game and then gave it to Nintendo or whatever. But
God, that's the one thing I miss about Pokemon is the transition from the physical to online is beautiful.
That would have been a great thing for the QR codes for the willpower system if they actually
That's what I thought they were building toward.
The emulator, yeah. Well, the stupid thing, and I'm just going to throw this out here, I think this is a really good closing thing, is the willpower, since that's been a really big topic since it ends on the 31st. Yeah, well, they haven't announced any of the prizing, and given the precedent they set last year of the top 500 people on that system getting a specific prize, not telling anyone is a really big dick move, because it's like, oh,
I'm in top 500.
You could scan this and get in there, or you could not and then miss out on this prize. But if there isn't actually a prize for top 500, you just wasted a shit ton of points for no reason. Congratulations.
To be fair, Jeff said he's working on trying to reveal them before the 31st. So it sounds like it's a company thing that Jeff is trying to circumvent.
It absolutely is, and he messaged me about messaging this trying to a bit more information, but obviously he's not going to divulge anything that's going to give me more information than anyone else, right? But the same thing with, they actually threw a second in the Caster Chronicle stuff is linked to the exact same system with no explanation of what the difference is. That's probably the exact same code cards, and they're just promos are somehow involved, which they also aren't just divulging on that side either. It's there's somehow a system that is linked together for both games, and they both get promos.
Like this is Casters and this is Force of Will.
It's the exact same code. There's no fucking difference. They literally the exact same code. There's no differentiation on their side of what is the Caster code and what's the Force of Will code.
Yeah, but we'll end it there. This will be 2 videos.
No.
Oh,
Alex wants these posted immediately. He would rather have done it live. But
I actually was gonna say, I'll talk to you about it after we end the video. Actually,
we'll end it then. So, if you guys are still here, say you're still
Brandon
here.
Bremont has a lost edit in his fucking house.
Say that, or you could say "Eat my nose, doggo," and we'll know what you mean. All right, we'll see you guys next time.